I'd like to call To order the Littleton City Council virtual regular meeting for Tuesday, October 6, 2020. It is 6:30. If we could have the roll call, please. City Clerk.
Mayor Valdez.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Malin.
Here.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Here.
Councilmember Elrod.
Here.
Councilmember Fay.
Here.
Councilmember Grove.
Here.
Councilmember Milliman.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. And Sam Fox, Assistant to the City Manager, if you could please tell us how this meeting will proceed.
Good evening, Mayor, members of Council, staff, citizens, and guests. I'm Sama Fox, Assistant to the City Manager, and I'll be serving as the moderator for this evening's virtual council meeting. We are streaming this meeting on Cable Channel 8, Facebook, and on our website, littletongov.org. Please be aware, comments left on Facebook Live will not be moderated and will not be included in the meeting minutes. Those wishing to participate in the public comment portion of the meeting are advised to view the meeting at littletongov.org under My Littleton, Littleton 8 TV, as this broadcast has the least amount of delay. The agenda will be handled by Mayor Valdez in the same way it would be handled for a regular in-person meeting. As always, citizen participation is encouraged during public comments and public hearings. To participate via phone, please call 669-900-6833. When prompted, enter the webinar ID 992-7782-7209. There will be two opportunities for citizen participation this evening, once during public comment and again during ordinances on second reading and public hearings. If you wish to speak during these opportunities, please call in early and stay on the line. Again, the number to call is 669-900-6833. When prompted, enter the ID 992-7782-7209. When the public comment or public hearing is announced, press star 9 to raise your hand and be recognized as a speaker. Microphones will be muted for all citizens calling in. Citizens can press star 9 to raise their hand and be recognized, and speakers will have 3 minutes to address council. The city clerk will announce when you have 30 seconds remaining and again when your time is up. We expect comments to be civil. Disrespectful or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. For agenda items, Mayor Valdez will handle the ask for a motion and a second, followed by discussion and a vote. Council will vote on agenda items using a thumbs up for a yes vote and a thumbs down for a no vote. The clerk will call each vote with all ayes and nays. Again, if you plan on participating during public comment or the public hearings, please call 669-900-6833. Enter the webinar ID 992-7782-7209. And please stay on the line and press star 9 to raise your hand to speak. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Sarah Fox. All right, Council, we're down to our approval of our agenda. And before we get started, I just want to make sure that everybody involved here on this Zoom meeting keeps themselves mute as much as possible so we can do away with some of the background noises. So, Council, everybody's had a chance to look at the agenda. Are there any changes to it? Seeing none, it is approved. We'll move forward. We're going down to our third item, which is our comments and reports. We'll start with our city manager.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I wanted to take just a minute here and share with Council and certainly our community a little bit of the work that myself as the city manager has been doing here with other city managers within Arapahoe County, along with county staff, when it comes to COVID-19 and our communication strategy. This perhaps is a little more timely than I anticipated. Our governor commented on some of the data here late this afternoon, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. So ever since COVID-19, city managers here in the county have been working with county staff and reviewing the COVID-19 data, and we've been looking for opportunities to approach the state for exceptions to the state health order. And we've been fairly successful with that. Our data is a little more unique compared to other parts of the metro area. And so we've tried to take advantage of that and allow more flexibility with our businesses. And we continue to do that. One of the important things is that the exceptions really do occur at the county level and not at the city level. So it was really essential for the city managers to work together here with the county on this approach. We many times in our meeting will have Tri-County Health present to kind of share with us some of the data that they've been collecting and helping us analyze that and trying to decide what exceptions to pursue. It became pretty apparent here a little over a month ago that the county needed some assistance in the communication strategy of this, not just Tri-County itself, but the county and the efforts that we're trying to make here with some of our exceptions. So we got a message here from the county communication staff that here we've been seeing an uptick in some of the measures of COVID-19 within Arapahoe County. Quite honestly, it parallels a lot of what the governor was sharing here earlier this afternoon. So we have been seeing an increase in the amount of positive tests within the county. We've also been seeing a rise in the use of hospital beds. Again, not at a significant level, but clearly a trend that's catching our attention. And I think why I'm raising this now is that I believe that it is time for us to reinforce the communication message here from the county through the cities to our citizens, our businesses here. I'm like anybody else and much of council, and I'm sure everybody in this community, we've been enjoying here the past month the opportunities to visit our businesses, our restaurants, to dine outside. And I think it's real important that we stay the course, that we do the kinds of things that Tri-County Health is recommended, and certainly the state health department. We wash our hands, we wear a mask, we maintain the social distancing. And I think that really is the message here that the county is asking the cities to reinforce. And so I have asked Kelly Nardi, our communications director, to work with the other cities and with the county in getting that message out and assisting our businesses to help share that information. In the end, we have clearly several months here that we're still going to be wrestling with COVID-19. We all know that. We have the flu and the cold season upon us here in pretty short order. And so I think that we do not want to risk having more restrictions placed on us. And I think it is a time for us to step back and try to do our best, our share, in making sure that we take on these best practices here, washing hands, social distancing, and wearing the mask. And I'm just recommending that we do this for our businesses, for our schools, certainly for ourselves and our families. And so I think it's just time right now for us to reinforce that message. So with that, Mayor, that's my report here this evening.
Great. Thank you very much. That was an important message. I really appreciate you sharing that with all of us. We'll move down to our city attorney.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All righty, council. Let's go ahead and we'll start with Council Member Milliman.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Mark, for that update. And I'm not even surprised to hear that. Working in healthcare, we are seeing an uptick as well. So I will echo your recommendations. Wear the mask, wear the mask, wear the mask, and wash your hands, but wear the mask. The only update I have tonight is actually a big thank you that I want to send to our Littleton Police Department. We had 2 events recently, both in District 4, that involved our businesses, and our police officers were involved. They responded, they acted accordingly, and I'm just so thankful for our police department within our community in keeping us safe. And huge thank you to Chief Stevens and to his entire staff. I really respect them all, and I'm very thankful that they are a big part of our community. So thank you. And that's it.
Great. Thank you very much. Council Member Grove, then Fay.
Thank you. I attended the Next Gen meeting last Thursday night, and among other things, they had a lively discussion on micromobility. They've been working with our Public Works Department and kind of trying to give them input. They talked about e-bikes, e-scooters, rental bikes. a lot of pros and cons, a lot of considerations. They're not ready to put it into anything formal, but they will. They did all their own research on it, which is quite expensive. So we'll be hearing about what they think about that in the near future. In addition, there was another subcommittee meeting that I did not attend, but they reported out. It's the Diversity, Equality, Inclusion, and Belongingness Committee. And they're just getting their list of topics together. They want to learn about immigrants and how the LIRC support immigrants and what services are offered. They also feel it's important to get their peers to vote in the upcoming election. Some future topics they want to talk about is education and information about safety in our community, homelessness, and they're going to coordinate with Councilmember Fay on that, mental health, early childhood education and support, and look and learn more about the Senior Resource Center at Bemis. The focus of those topics is yet to be determined, but I just wanted to make council aware of some things that they are working on.
Great. Thank you very much. Councilmember Fay, then Elrod.
I would like to clarify, because it's come up in several recent sessions under various comments about what SHMO is and what it is. SHMO stands for, funny name, South Metro Housing Options. It's the low-income housing agency that we have for Littleton and South Metro area. I talked with Corey Reitz, I think he calls it Ritz. Either way, they have 583 housing units for 1,225 households. One of the most interesting pieces of information is that 46%, almost half of the households, are disabled or elderly. One of the things we hear from citizens often is the 71 houses. The 71 houses account for just about 10% of the housing. And the important part about them is that they're very expensive to maintain and to have. So this 10% costs $329 per month to maintain, which is almost twice as much as it costs to maintain all of the other units each. These are older houses. They're geographically spread out all over the area. They're owned by HUD, which is really interesting. So the Federal Housing and Urban Development. HUD has little interest, if any, in them anymore, wants to sell them, and gives little, if any, maintenance money for them. Again, these houses with yards, which we often think is special, almost 50% of the occupants of those are disabled or elderly people who have probably no physical ability to shovel or mow or money to pay somebody else to do it. This is subsidized housing. HUD owns the houses. SHMO, South Metro Housing Options, keeps them up. Again, this is local expense for a national piece of property. So HUD wants to sell the houses, wants them sold to qualified individuals that earn 80% of the area median income. So they're still going to be occupied by lower income people. They'll still help us with our need for housing, affordable housing, as we call it. When the house is sold, it is sold through Habitat for Humanity. And so Habitat holds the mortgage for that, and it has to be sold to somebody who income qualifies. If it resells, it has to sell again to someone who income qualifies. There's no plan to redevelop the properties, and they can't be redeveloped into multiple family housing any more than any other property could in the same zone. That's an important piece to acknowledge. Where do the current residents go? Well, the first option, they have the first option to buy the houses if they income qualify and if they're interested in home ownership. Seeing that 46% of the occupants of SHMO housing are elderly or disabled, chances are they won't be up for home ownership, but maybe. SHMO has been working with these people for more than a year and will keep working with them for many years to come, if necessary, to make sure that they have full assistance in finding housing appropriate housing and moving. So to summarize, these 71 houses that we keep hearing about are owned by HUD, and they cost us locally to have them more than twice as much as it costs us, SHMO, local organization, to maintain any other housing. They often aren't appropriate for disabled or elderly people because they include lawn care, snow shoveling, and Habitat for Humanity will take the houses over to make sure that they're properly allocated to income qualified people, and that instead of being there waiting for maintenance and renovation that doesn't come from HUD, that Habitat gets that work done. And that's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Elrod, then Driscoll.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended a Dr. Cog meeting, I think it was last week or the week before, and they did announce that Littleton was awarded yet another grant. So congratulations to the Public Works team and to the city, of course. This is for the Littleton System Communication project. So this is the synchronization and alignment of our traffic lights and timing, et cetera, for better operational movement of our traffic throughout the city. So that's a grant of about $589,000. So it's great to hear that. Also at the Dr. Cog meeting, there was a fantastic presentation from JJ Ament from Denver EDC. As a reminder, Denver EDC is Denver Economic Development Corporation, but it's not just limited to Denver, it's the greater Denver area that does include Littleton as well. We work very closely with Denver EDC for any business opportunities, businesses wanting to come to the city of Littleton. So some updates from that presentation included some good news on the economy. Q3 of 2020 will be a recovery quarter, so trends are going back up here in Q3. Colorado actually ranked 50th in unemployment claims, so ranking 50th is a really good thing on that measure. DIA was actually the top ranking airport in July and August. And consumer spending is actually back up. So all really good news from a consumer spending standpoint. That's only down 11% from January. So yeah, so good news there. I'm hopeful of this trend continuing. To Mark's point earlier, let's just make sure we can keep our businesses open and take the measures that we need to do that. Some other things that he talked about was a big driver of the interest in Colorado, of course, is some of the outdoor industries. Another comment that he made was a bit disappointing for me is that also marijuana, we are known for our marijuana industry. That's, again, not something I choose for our state to be known for, but that's where we are, unfortunately. So to that point, I also want to point out that we have a ballot question number 300 that will be coming forward in November for citizens to vote on. I do want to point out that while it's positioned as a citizen initiative, this was an initiative that was started and circulated by the industry. They are claiming that there could be up to $1 million in sales tax revenue for the city. But I also want to point out that $1 million, were it to come to fruition, is only 1% of our city of Littleton revenue. So just recognize the caliber of that is, I'll say a small piece of our Littleton revenues. And I really hope and want our citizens to also consider the cost of what recreational marijuana might be for our city. The Centennial Institute did a study where every dollar of revenue equates to over $4 in cost to a community, from high school dropouts to productivity rates to traffic incidences and ER visits. So please, citizens of Littleton, please consider this and do not support question 300 on the ballot this November. All I got.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Driscoll, then Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, no report, Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Millen.
Thanks. Real quick, I attended the South Platte Working Group last week, and as they're gearing up for projects, they're interested in hearing from each municipality and other government that's involved in the group about their priorities for the river corridor. So if council has some things in mind, if you could just please reach out to me with those so I can convey them to the group. That's all. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. And I met with the director of the Metro Housing, South Metro Housing Authority as well. And I did ask them if they could come in and do a presentation for us in the very near future, maybe under the citizens appearance, so they could come in for about 10 minutes and give us a presentation and discuss some of the issues that Councilmember Fay had brought up there. Also, our next meeting will be next Tuesday. It's a study session, October 13th. And that is all I have on that. So we will move. We do not have any citizens appearance tonight, but let's go ahead and we'll move on to our item number 5. That's the public comments. And it is, I'll open up the public comments. It is 6:51. I would like to remind the callers, if you would like to speak on a specific item on tonight's agenda under item 8, ordinances on second reading, please reserve your comments until the public hearing for the specific item to ensure that your comments become part of the record for that particular item. And with that, Sama Fox, if you could please inform the audience how they can participate.
Thank you, Mayor. If you wish to address City Council under public comment, please call 669-900-6833. And when prompted, enter the webinar ID 992-7782-7209. Press *9 to be recognized. Citizen microphones will be muted until the citizen is called upon to speak by the last 3 digits of their phone number. Please state your name and district or address clearly for the record. A reminder, the city clerk will notify you when you have 30 seconds remaining, and again when your time is up. Public comment is an opportunity to express opinions or ask questions regarding issues that are not part of public hearings on tonight's agenda. If you wish to speak on either of the public hearings this evening, please reserve comments until the public hearing for each item is announced. Comments made regarding either of these items will not be part of public record unless made during the public hearing for the item. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. The city clerk will notify you when you have 30 seconds remaining, and again when your time is up. The city clerk is not authorized by the Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take action at the meetings on any issue raised by public comment that is not part of tonight's agenda. The mayor may refer the matter to the city manager, to city staff, or the city attorney for immediate comment after public comment, or staff to obtain additional information and report back to council as appropriate. We expect comments to be civil. Disrespectful or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. Mayor, we currently have one hand up. Caller 589, please press *6. Please press #6 to unmute yourself. I'm sorry, *6 to unmute yourself. Thank you, caller 589.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Jeannie Erickson, and I live in District 1. I just wanted to speak about the 71 houses. Since I am the person that usually speaks about the 71 houses, I was very happy to hear Councilmember Fay talk about them tonight and give a little bit of information. Getting rid of the 71 houses that are all low-income families live in them right now, I don't believe is a good idea for the city of Littleton. These houses are single-family homes and duplexes, and they are mainly rented by families with children. Selling all of these homes that have been strategically placed all around Littleton since the 1970s and integrated amongst the whole town was a wonderful way to put low-income housing everywhere. It was a wonderful way to not start the projects. People are really going to be put out once these homes are sold, none of these people that live in them are going to be able to afford to buy them. I would be surprised if one person would be able to afford to buy them. They are going to now have to live in an apartment. I think it's awful that families, low-income families with children, have to live in an apartment and no longer have a yard for their children to play in. I am really, really upset about what Littleton is planning on doing. The Littleton of the 1970s had it together, and this South Metro housing does not. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Jeannie. Sama, do we have another caller?
We do, and I'd just like to remind any callers, if you'd like to speak during public comment, please press star 9. Our next caller is caller 819. Caller 819, you have been unmuted. Please begin speaking.
Hi, this is Pam Chadbourne. I live in District 1 downtown, and I'll just follow up what Jeannie said, a couple of items. First off, HUD has for decades supplied funds for maintenance of public housing of the type that we're talking about for the 71 homes. Due to political reasons, and really honestly an attack on public housing in America, I will say a certain party has restricted HUD's funds for this maintenance. So I don't buy the argument that the maintenance cost of this housing is inappropriate for the city to undertake. I buy the argument that HUD needs to get back in the business of maintaining this housing because, as Jeannie mentioned, integration of different incomes is essential to the American process and culture. When housing is segregated by income or race or other factors, that's when we create cultural divisions that last generations, and that is not, in my opinion, American, much less Littleton. So let's be clear that this is not something that is good that this HUD is doing. This is just a political action, as many things are happening in Washington that is part political right now that need to be reversed. The last thing Littleton should do is sacrifice this housing because of this transient political climate. Second of all, I want to talk about good planning process and how much easier it would be, City Council, if we had an integrated city concept at this point to help us understand, for example, how much affordable housing we need in each district of the city. So the step that was missing in Envision is we went from this kind of generic airy-fairy 5 keep in focus goals to detailed code for downtown. And you know, guys, you never do a building block until you've got the whole structure planned, and we don't have that. There should have been 5 or 6 concepts of Littleton as an integrated functioning unit with targets for population growth, where it would be, where the affordable housing would be, how much of it, and many other factors about city planning. We still need that, Council. We really shouldn't be going to detailed design before we have an integrated system concept for the city. Thanks very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Pam. And Sama, do we have another caller?
We do. Just a final reminder to press star 9 if you'd like to speak during public comment. Our next caller is caller 342. Caller 342, please press star 6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
All right, caller 342.
This is Kyle Schlachter in District 2. I would just like to follow up on the previous 2 callers' comments. I agree that, housing, attainable and affordable housing is a very important policy issue here in the city of Littleton. And, you know, the city council needs to set the directions, create policies that allow different types of housing to be created in different areas, stemming from downtown, which I know you'll get to later on with the phase 2 amendments, doing what we can to allow the greatest amount of opportunity for affordable homes to be put in there. But also with this issue with the 71 homes, I think the first caller still doesn't quite understand that these 71 homes are not going away and they will remain low-income housing, affordable housing. It will still be part of the pool of resources for our community to use as low-income housing. They just won't be operated by South Metro Housing Options. And the sales of these houses will allow SHMO to add even more housing inventory into the city. So while I wish we didn't have to sell them, the fact that the maintenance costs are so high and that HUD is not being a responsible partner, as the second caller mentioned, this is not a terribly bad situation. I would urge Ms. Erickson to call Corey Reitz and discuss the issue so she can get a better understanding of what's going on, that these houses will remain low income and it will allow the addition of future houses, low-income houses in the city. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Kyle. Sam, next caller.
Mayor, we have no other hands raised at this point in time.
Okay, well, thank you very much, callers. And with that, then, we will close the public comments at 7:02. And the city manager, city attorney, would you like to add anything to the comments or respond?
Mayor, no comments.
Great. City attorney?
No comment, Mayor. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you very much. We will move on to our, let's see, we're going to move on to our consent agenda items. And if we could start with Sama Fox, if you could please, if you would please.
Of course, consent agenda items may be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion. Any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem Malin, if you would please introduce the items.
Thank you, Mayor. Consent agenda item A, ordinance 36, 2020, an ordinance on first reading to be known as the annual appropriation bill, adopting the annual budget for all municipal purposes of the city of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, state of Colorado, for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2020 and ending December 31st, 2021. Letter B, ordinance 35, 2020, an ordinance on first reading establishing the tax levy of 2.0 mills to defray the costs of the municipal government of the city of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, state of Colorado, for the city's fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2020 and ending December 31st, 2020. Consent agenda item C, ordinance 38, 2020, an ordinance on first reading of the city of Littleton, Colorado as the governing body of the city of Littleton Stormwater and Flood Management Utility Enterprise, adopting the 2021 budget. Item D, ordinance 37, 2020, an ordinance of the first reading of the city of Littleton, Colorado as the governing body of the city of Littleton Sewer Utility Enterprise, adopting the 2021 budget. E, ID 20-257, motion to approve expenditure of CARES Act funds. Item F, ID 20-249, motion to cancel City Council's regular meeting on November 3rd, 2020. And finally, item G, ID 20-252, approval of the September 15th, 2020 virtual regular meeting minutes.
Great. Thank you, Council. I'm looking for a motion in a second.
So moved.
All right. Councilmember Elrod has made the motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
All right. Councilmember Milliman has second. Council, we'll go ahead and do a vote. Thumbs up is approved. Thumbs down is opposed. So if we will, go ahead and vote.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you very much, Council. Let's move on down to, where are we here? We're going to move on down to we have no general business tonight. So we'll move down to item number 8 on our agenda. It's the ordinance on second reading and public public hearings. Sam Fox, if you could please inform the audience again how they can participate.
Thank you. Citizens wishing to speak during any of the public hearings tonight should please call 669-900-6833. And when prompted, enter the webinar ID 992-7782-7209. Press star 9 to raise your hand and be recognized. After the staff presentation, you will be recognized by the last 3 digits of your phone numbers. Speakers will have 3 minutes to address council on the public hearing topic. Due to the anticipated number of citizens wishing to speak on this item tonight, please be respectful of council, staff, and other citizens' time by simply stating your name, address, or district and stance before sharing your concise comments, or if your points have already been made, acknowledging your agreement with prior statements. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so ordinance number 34-2020, an ordinance on second reading approving Phase 2 amendments to Title 10 of the City Code relative to downtown development. So council, we've been working this for quite a while, and this is just another phase that we're in here, and we're going to have a discussion on this tonight and make some decisions. With that, I'll turn it over to the city manager.
All right, Mayor, thank you. Good evening, council. I think I'm going to make a quick handoff to Kathleen Osher, our Director of Community Services, and she'll kick things off here with a presentation by staff.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. It is with great pleasure this evening that I bring to you the Phase 2 amendments to the Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code. I'm going to share my screen and have a brief presentation so that we can then answer any questions. I'm joined this evening by members of our staff, the Director of Community Development, Jennifer Henninger, Deputy Director of Community Development, Mike Sutherland, as well as Brian Mabry from our consultant team at Candid Keast Collaborative. As you know, these Phase 2 amendments are relative to development in downtown and follow up and build on our first set of Phase 1 amendments adopted back in May. Ultimately, these look to implement our comprehensive plan vision and policies that were adopted both in 2018 and again in October of 2019. This is our first attempt at deploying the character-based approach that was first outlined in our future land use and character map that was adopted as part of our comprehensive plan. There is a current moratorium in place. There is an additional agenda item this evening to discuss that. So I'll leave both that discussion and questions relative to the moratorium for later in the agenda. The defined priorities as part of Phase 2 were to address things like open space, building heights, setbacks, step backs, really any transitions in use or district, as well as parking. Overall, what this draft in front of you this evening is to do is create a more permissive environment for uses taking in place inside the building, but create a more restrictive sense of the design of buildings and the site than our current regulations. This ultimately works to create and maintain a mixed use and pedestrian oriented area and environment that you would expect to find in a downtown. Obviously, what we've tried to incorporate are stricter and more specific controls on things like building height, scale, bulk, building placement, and the other dimensional standards that get typically outlined in this regulatory framework. We think in the end, this creates a much more predictable and straightforward understanding of the types of projects that the city would ultimately like to see. We've identified a number of policy goals from our comprehensive plan that this draft then and these Phase 2 amendments to Title 10 help address. Obviously, the historic assets of downtown are of extreme importance. We believe that this adds to the protection and buffering of those assets. Obviously, livability and quality of life are of the utmost concern throughout the city. We think these Phase 2 amendments deliver on that goal. We think that there is also the opportunity for more choice in transportation, particularly as identified in our transportation master plan and comprehensive plan, that choice near transit stations. There is a little more flexibility in these phase 2 amendments relative to parking, certainly not less stringent. We are also looking to deliver on the high quality expectations of the community relative to greenscaping, tree protections, lighting, signage. And we think that this phase 2 creates a much more illustrative and robust definition of how we see those regulations, again, relative to downtown. Obviously, character has been a huge emphasis for us as part of the comprehensive plan. And we are looking for this phase 2 and feel that we've got a draft in front of you this evening that helps encourage that compatibility with the character of surrounding areas in downtown with both redevelopment and new development. One of the biggest goals, of course, of both council and the comprehensive plan was to address financial sustainability. We believe that these phase 2 amendments help enhance that city's tax base and diversify our revenue sources as well. The building types that are outlined are really defined by building type and character area, things about setbacks, mass, step backs, again, defined by that building type and character area. And then height is really included in terms of this context, allowing for more intensity, especially in the downtown mixed use character area. And we think that it's within reason and it creates a reasonable scale as it stands in the phase 2 amendments that are before you this evening. There is a character map that is part of the phase 2 amendments that includes the 4 character areas that have been defined: downtown mixed use, downtown neighborhood residential, downtown transition area, and downtown Main Street. Public engagement has been a big piece of how we've approached getting to this point this evening through the public hearing, starting off with a survey, a community kickoff event, being in front of council, planning commission, historical preservation board through a number of both discussions and meetings, holding 2 Envision studios to gain additional input, as well as do some of that preference survey work as part of those studios. As you know, you've spent countless hours discussing these phase 2 amendments, as have your appointed boards of Planning Commission and Historic Preservation Board. We did release a draft in July for about 30 days. We received close to 200 comments as part of that public comment period. There have been 2 public hearings as we come into this evening, one with Historical Preservation Board, which did include citizen comment, as well as one with Planning Commission that did include citizen comment. And as you know, this is an overarching goal as we've approached the Envision work, both in 2018 and 2019, and continues to be a big component as we soldier on through this phase 1 or phase 2 amendments this evening, and then pick up with the work on transitioning to a unified land use code the final months of this year and into next year. So with that, I'm not sure if, as much as we've discussed this, if you have any additional questions, but there are members of staff here this evening to answer those, as well as Brian Mabry from our Candid Keys consulting team.
anything to do with zoning, just acknowledging the fact that we have this Main Street area and it's character-based, and how any surrounding development or redevelopment would impact that character area.
And the First Amendment was changes to that purpose statement and adding language there.
Yes.
Our internal discussions have really been based on the fact that council has provided direction to the Historical Preservation Board, and they have undertaken that process. And we feel it would be most appropriate to allow them to do the steps that they've outlined between now and next year, and then incorporate what they learned from that process into any changes in the purpose statement. And what they've outlined is a very, very strong public process of kind of marching through a series of tasks based on your direction. So that's our recommendation, is to let that strong public process that they've outlined play out, and then make any adjustments that they may learn as part of that process and incorporate that. Mark, I don't know if you had anything to add relative to that amendment as well.
Actually, Kathleen, I don't. I think you explained it well. I just think from the staff perspective, I think it's probably just best to let Historic Preservation Board kind of play that process out.
Well, and this amendment would not preclude that process. It could still happen, right?
That's correct. I think just the staff recommendation was to, with the direction from council for them to pursue that, that they sort of didn't offer any amendments relative to these statements. So our recommendation would be to hold steady with what we've got and then allow that process to play out for them.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Councilmember Milliman.
Thank you, Mayor. So Kathleen or Brian, maybe this is a question for Brian. I know that there's been a lot of concern about height in downtown, specifically 5 stories in the mixed use areas. Could you explain how you came to that with regards to the number of stories in the mixed use area, specifically 5 stories?
Yeah, and I may call on Brian to just talk through that process of both the input from the studios that we heard, and again, those preference surveys, incorporating what we learned in our collaboration with Nori Winter, and the design standards and expertise that he brings. And then ultimately, the factor of learning from EPS, that economic project viability model, and the overall economic feasibility of downtown, and how those factors sort of played in together. I will also add that through discussion with City Council, Planning Commission, and Historical Preservation Board, that was an indicator to us that height was something that had some tolerance in certain character areas. And so that was part of what helped guide us as well. So Brian, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, you kind of, Kathleen, said better probably than what I would have said. So the only thing I would add to that, I guess, is just that being mindful of the sensitivity to height downtown, and trying to lean on design techniques that Nori Winter provided to lessen the impact of the height and lessen the bulk of a building. That was a big part of it as well. But pretty much everything Kathleen just said, I would echo. And I know that there are some potential amendments that could take place to that number of stories and height that have been provided for certain buildings and districts or character areas, excuse me. And those are, I think definitely worth consideration this evening.
Great. All righty, Kelly, you still have your hand up? You're through with your question?
I am. Yep.
Okay, Thank you very much.
Hello.
Councilmember Driscoll, then Elrod.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. We had some letters sent to council that were shared amongst all of us, and it was mostly regarding, and Kathleen, this is mostly directed at you. On page 6 of our map, it's the DNR, the Downtown Neighborhood Residential, in yellow. And the question that was the overwhelming concern people had was, can existing businesses still operate their business out of the home, or if it's a business, still be a business? And I'd like to just address that a little bit, and or have you address that a little bit, and just put everybody's mind at ease a little bit.
Yeah, in short, yes. But just to further clarify, one of the things that we hoped sort of going into this process, because we are moving from what would be a Euclidean code that's very much based on use to a character-based code, that we were in most cases looking at a reclassification, sort of a, you were this, now you're this. What's become very clear in these phase 2 amendments for downtown is that now we will have to consider a rezoning. And as you all know, that'll be a secondary step that we take. As that became clear, it becomes super important for us that there is an opportunity for all of the property owners to be notified of that change and go through a public process that begins with a public hearing on November 9th with Planning Commission. So I think that Reed would probably add some more information this evening relative to that, but our other staff members, Jennifer Henninger, may add to that as well. But in short, we're not looking to make a use illegal, but we are looking to make sure that properties understand how this new zoning will affect the map.
And if I could just jump in on the end of that. Yeah, some of the properties where the use has changed with the new zoning, they'll be considered a legal non-conforming use, so they'll still be allowed to operate in that capacity as long as they don't change the use. So no concerns with some of those business owners being concerned that they may have to, do something different. They're fine with continuing to do what they're doing.
Good. Thank you very much. Councilmember Elrod.
Thank you, Pat, for asking that question. I was going to ask the same question, so I will ask a follow-up though. So the existing businesses would be allowed to continue to operate, but if a new business or if the business changes hands, that particular property would no longer be allowed for business purposes. Is that correct, Reed?
There's different ways on how you can phase that out. I would say simply because as long as the use remains the same, they should be fine. It's when that use changes to something that is more intense is when there's an issue with, or if that use is abandoned for a particular period of time, then it goes away. But no, they're fine for now.
I think the comments, let me state it as a question. This particular area, which are essentially the properties along Prince Street, are the ones that are in question, and that we've received, rightfully so, many comments on. Would it be appropriate that this particular area was in fact zoned CA, which allowed for these types of uses, and we have now changed it to DNR, which now excludes some of these uses? Would it be appropriate to suggest an amendment tonight to change that character map along Prince, for example, to DTA? Or would that be something that we take as an amendment to the next meeting, which is the zoning discussion meeting? What I'm trying to preclude or avoid is that we get a number of businesses and like one particular lot, changes to DMU, another particular lot stays at DNR, and then we lose the intended maybe architectural consistency in design and then end up doing spot zoning by exception. So would it be more appropriate to make that amendment tonight or next meeting?
I would say that most likely that's going to come forward in the entirety of the ULUC when we talk about neighborhoods and what's going in individual places. I think Jennifer has signed on. Maybe she wants to opine. Sorry, I had a cold. Hopefully.
Yeah. Yes. That's the problem with little kids, right? They bring home everything. Sorry, Reed. So basically, to your question, Karina, we have talked about this on the staff level, and this is something that we feel like is a perfect kind of situation of what we have to explore further in the ULUC. So our guidance right now to you all is stand firm on what we are doing, and this is something that we will address in the ULUC.
All right, I'll hold further questions until we hear from the public.
Great, thank you very much. And with that, council, I'm going to open up the public hearing. It is 7:26. Open up the public hearing for this item. And as mentioned before, due to the anticipated number of citizens wishing to speak on this item, if another citizen has already made your point in their comments, if you would just please state, just along with your name, address, or district that you live in, your stance on the item, or acknowledge that you agree with the statements that have already been made. So with that, Sama, if you could please bring up the callers.
Thank you, Mayor. We do have a number of callers on the line who have not yet raised your hand. If you would like to speak on this item, please press *9 now to join our queue. Our first caller is going to be caller 493. Caller 342, you will be on deck. Caller 493, you have been unmuted. Please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
All right, caller 493.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Frank Atwood. I live in District 4. I'm concerned most of City Council are not reading enough. I request you vote against this Phase 2 ordinance because it's so extensive, and my evidence of not reading is, at your most recent meeting, a majority of City Council passed an ordinance for direct election of mayor without following the charter requirement of adequate posting, which is in the charter. The charter requires posting in 2 of 3 sites, newspaper, website, and major city buildings 7 days before the hearing. 2 of the 3 were posted 5 days before the hearing, and the third was posted even later. Maybe the minority knew this and were deliberately sabotaging this effort. However, regardless, the majority demonstrated they weren't familiar enough with our short charter to understand its requirements. Should I trust you with a document at least 4 times longer? Second, after 6 months, it appears to me that finally Council is conceding that as presented, the Phase 2 ordinance would be a takings and has taken the map out of the package. Who on City Council has been studying this vigorously for the past 6 months? Who reviewed it prior to the first reading? Additionally, because of COVID-19, you have not had citizen input to such a critical document or the necessity to sell it to the public. Again, I'm concerned most of City Council are not reading critically enough, and I request you vote against this Phase 2 ordinance. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, Frank. Next caller.
Thank you, Mayor. We had 342 is next, but it looks like here we are. 342, please unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Good evening, Council. Again, this is Kyle Schlachter, still in District 2. I just want to let you know that I support this ordinance approving the Phase 2 amendments to the City Code relative to downtown. I do know that you all have read this document many times. I know a lot of hard work has gone into it over the past year here now. A lot of changes here. Everything's been supported by staff, planning commission, historic preservation board. There's been lots of citizen input. So everyone can pat themselves on the back for all the work that's gone into it. I just wanted to say, I do not support 4 of the 5 amendments that were at least presented in the packet. I'm sure there'll be others, spur of the moment amendments. Those amendments 1 through 4 are kind of unnecessary and would diminish some of the other efforts. Don't necessarily directly address the character of downtown, despite that's what they're saying they do. When we think of a character of a downtown, and you think of things like, is it pedestrian friendly? Is it well maintained? Are there trees, shrubs? Does traffic go through? Is there good signage? Is it public space, bike lanes, storefronts attractive? Is it low vacancy? And yes, we do consider, consistency of scale in a downtown, but 3, 4, 5-story buildings are not inconsistent with a downtown or urban environment, which downtown Littleton is. We are maintaining and reusing historic sites and historic buildings downtown. So that's there, but I would urge you to not approve Amendment 4 that restricts the heights with 3, 4, or 5-story buildings that are already down there. So this is consistent with downtown's character currently and going forward. And then there was Amendment 5 that I do support. I think it's great to encourage our use of RTD parking lots, RTD transportation with bikes and reducing parking there. So thank you, and I hope you guys approve the document pretty much as it is presented.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. Next caller, please.
Thank you. The next caller is caller 570. Caller 570, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
All right, caller 570.
All right. City Council.
Go ahead.
All right, City Council members, thank you so much. My name is David Ortiz. I'm District 2. I'm just going to make this quick in saying that I echo what Kyle Schlachter said. I support Phase 2. I do not support 1 through 4, especially Amendment 4. Just to echo, agreeing with him that having 3 to 5 stories is not going to clash with the character of the unique downtown that Littleton has to offer. And if we're going to speak on affordable, attainable housing and talk about character, for me, what embodies the character of Littleton, I was injured in service. I used to fly helicopters for the Army, came to Craig Hospital for rehab, looked for a community to live in, and this was the one I picked because it was affordable and attainable at the time. I'm not going to say specifically how much I paid, but I paid less than $200K for my home. You will never find anything like that now. And the thought of another wounded veteran not being able to move here, or a young family not being able to move here, or those that are, looking to downsize their lifestyle because their kids are moved out and they're growing older, are not able to find affordable, attainable options here, is concerning for me. I think that goes in contrast with the character of Littleton. And so, although I'm supportive of increasing the heights of 3 to 5 stories, we need to look into either creating a mandate or a sliding incentive scale on creating affordable, attainable units. Just creating more units is not going to create more affordable, attainable housing. Housing is not like any other commodity where if you just increase the supply, you're going to decrease rents and pricing. That's not how it works. We need to look for a more creative solution when it comes to how we're fighting for affordable, attainable options. So echo what Kyle said with the caveat of we need to look at not just increasing the number of or more, because that has been proven not to solve the problem. And there are other solutions that we can adopt that doesn't necessarily have to look like other cities, that can take on the flavor and unique character of Littleton and preserve that while still making sure that we're making room for our kids that moved out, went to college, and that want to move back and start their own families here and enjoy the same quality of life and opportunities that we had growing up here. So again, I appreciate you hearing me out and what you all are considering here. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Sama, next caller.
Our next caller is caller 310. Caller 310, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Good evening, Council. My name is Corey Ritz, Executive Director of South Metro Housing Options. I didn't know I was going to be so popular earlier in the meeting tonight, but in any case, I don't support amendments 1 through 4 that were proposed in the study session. And I'd like to address a point that I've heard, and that is that 5 stories in the downtown mixed-use areas would not guarantee additional affordable housing units in those areas. I've heard some say that instead of a blanket 5-story height allowance in the DMU, that we should instead focus on an affordable housing-based height or density allowance. And I agree. I think that would be a great approach to help address our affordable housing issues. The issue I have, however, is that with that approach, I don't agree with the timing. An affordable housing ordinance sounds very good in theory, and we'd be very appreciative of one. But unfortunately, when it comes to developing affordable housing, providers like us are often told that affordable housing will be a priority, but that it will happen sometime in the future, different time, different location. And then when it gets to that point, sometime down the road, other reasons seem to pop up that prohibit the development of affordable housing. So the need for affordable housing is now, and there is no need to wait for another time or another location. There's no need to kick the can down the road. I do understand that 5 stories does not guarantee additional affordable housing units in the DMU areas, but also a promise to address affordable housing in the future doesn't guarantee that it will actually happen. So council members change, time goes by, and other problems and issues arise. And then the affordable housing can is, again, kicked down the road, not a priority. So the bottom line is that I believe the 5-story height allowance in the DMU areas should be approved. I know housing is a very complicated and challenging issue, so I appreciate your time and energy spent on this process. And additionally, both SMHO and the Littleton Housing Task Force look forward to working with you on the affordable housing ordinance in the near future. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Corey. Sama, our next caller, please.
Thank you. I'd just like to remind the other callers in the queue to press *9 if you would like to speak on this topic and join our queue. Our next caller is caller 638. Caller 638, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hi, this is Alexis Barrera. I live at 5460 Manitou Road in District 1. And I was just calling to say that I echo the support of Phase 2 as it is, and I do not support the amendments 1 through 4 that were proposed tonight for all the reasons that Kyle, Corey, and David have already mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Our next caller, please.
Our next caller is caller 271. Caller 271, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Good evening. My name is Kim DeZero. I am a downtown area Littleton resident and previously a longtime resident of Inglewood. I can walk and bike to Main Street, to the light rail, and also to work. I think it's a wonderful benefit, and I think this is a great opportunity for us not to miss, to bring in more mixed-use buildings, more housing, more opportunities for businesses. Please take the recommendations of the Preservation Board, the Planning Commission, your Housing Authority, your staff, your residents, and your community partners. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much, Kim. Our next caller, please.
Thank you. Another quick reminder, I see a number of callers in the queue who have not yet raised your hand. If you'd like to speak on this topic, please press *9 to raise your hand and join our queue. Our next caller is 917. Caller 917, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hey there, my name is Rob Hall. I am in District 1. I live on Alamo Drive and lived on Curtis Street right in downtown for a bunch of years. And I agree with Kyle and Corey, David and Alexis. I believe that 5 stories would be a benefit to our community, providing needed housing. Hopefully that will be affordable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Next caller, please.
Our next caller is caller 210. Caller 210, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Kate Peterson. I'm a resident in District 3. I do not support the amendments 1 through 4, and it's concerning that City Council is ignoring the recommendations from the consultants to develop a plan for the city of Littleton. Both the Planning Commission and Historic Preservation Board have voted in favor of the plan. The proposed plan allows for better buildings with high quality design. It clearly states the type of buildings that fit the character in the proposed code supports 5 stories. This is only the beginning of a long process of land use code work. And my family moved to Littleton to be part of a community, an inclusive community. And as many Littleton citizens know, this is one of the core values of Littleton's comprehensive plan, the Envision Littleton. And this plan that is set out to guide future development for the next 20 years. So eliminating options for multi-use buildings due to height concerns and reducing height is really short-sighted. It's not reflective of what Littleton citizens want. And I strongly urge you to please listen to the experts, listen to your constituents, and please be progressive leaders in the business community and city planning, just like you committed. And so that my daughter and future grandkids can grow up in a vibrant, inclusive community. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kate. Next caller, please.
Thank you. The next caller is caller 740. Caller 740, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello, I'm John Craig. I'm in District 2. I'm an architect, and I'm a resident of Littleton as well. I just wanted to speak really quickly about a couple things that I've noticed. I've been a part of some of the webinars that allowed us to get to where we are with the public process. And I completely agree about Amendment 4, as Kyle mentioned earlier. Having a restriction below 5 stories, I think, is detrimental for the future of the downtown area. I would also want to mention something that, as an architect that has to go through planning regularly, there's always this good intention with codes that are adopted, but I think a gentleman earlier mentioned that has everybody read it all? Reading it, I think, and really understanding the unintended consequences of some of the written requirements are 2 different things. What I would encourage everybody to understand is like things that are very specific are sometimes not helpful for design, for good design. And I just have a question for council because I've never seen this, but was there an opportunity where council has seen non-conforming buildings downtown overlaid with what the code now will require so that it's clear that those aren't allowed? Because I haven't seen that before. So I just want to make sure that there's some kind of historical or empirical value that you can see that we've tried. And that's really all I have. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, John. Next caller, please.
Our next caller is caller 660. Caller 660, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hello, my name is Julia Montano, and I'm a resident of Littleton. I live in the South area by Southbridge Park, and I was calling just to offer support for the height increase. I've heard other callers talk about that having a higher density and allowing up to 5-story buildings would truly start to create the inclusive Littleton that I want to live in and work in and raise my children in. I've lived in Littleton my whole life, and I want my children to live in a community that has diversity and is inclusive of all communities. And right now, that's not a possibility. My children could not afford to grow up and live here if they made the same kind of living that I'm making as a public school teacher. I really think that having higher density buildings in and around the downtown area is not mutually exclusive to all of the, sorry, I was on another call that they were hearing. I really think that having higher density buildings is not mutually exclusive to having a historic downtown. I think that you can build up and around 5 stories near the downtown area and still preserve the cute, quaint, historic feel of Main Street. I think that more housing opportunities makes it a more vibrant for businesses, residents, and visitors. And having those high density housing areas near light rail makes it more inclusive for families who have transportation issues. So I would encourage the city council to create a more inclusive Littleton by addressing these phase 2 amendments and allowing for up to 5-story buildings in and around the downtown area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia. And next caller, please.
I'd like to just make a final reminder, if you're on our call and have not already pressed *9 to join our queue and would like to speak, please press *9 now. Our next caller will be caller 716. Caller 716, you have been unmuted. Please press *6 to begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Maureen Whalen. I'm in District 1. I live on Hill Street. I would like to echo what Julia and Alexis and David and Kyle and a few other names I can't recall right now promote. I am for an inclusive Littleton. I am for my children being able to afford to move here someday. I do not believe that 5 stories will limit the historic feel of our neighborhood, and I strongly encourage you to listen to your constituents. I could not dream of moving here currently like I did 12 years ago, and I just think an inclusive, diverse Littleton will help us all be thriving community members. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Maureen. Next caller.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 2 hands left raised. Caller 573, you are next. Caller 573, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hi, Council. Thanks for hearing me tonight. My name is John Strong. I live at 5493 South Prince Street. I am a former police officer with the City of Littleton. I just retired in July after 30 years of service. I have a concern about some of the changes that are being made in the zoning with regard to the houses along Prince Street specifically. The old, or what will be the old central area use, allowed certain businesses and certain setbacks. And it seems like the new DNR zoning is not going to allow businesses. It sounded like one of the council members had already spoken about that, saying that some of the businesses that are there now may be allowed, but if they wanted to change strictly, they wouldn't be allowed after that. I'm concerned because one of the reasons I have this house in this specific zone, CA, was because I had always wanted to do a business. Now that I'm retired, I was planning on doing a business out of my house, and it seems like this new code and zone will strictly limit me from doing that kind of thing. It would seem reasonable that you guys consider keeping some of the uses, business uses, as they were in the central area zone instead of strictly restricting them. One of the problems I have is that my house and my neighbor's house at 5483 South Prince is in this same block where there's already mixed use and tall buildings and businesses. I don't understand why just 2 houses in the same block would be restricted, along with all the other potential houses on Prince Street from Crestline to Main Street. Thank you for your time and have a good night.
Thank you, John, and thank you for your service to Littleton. Next caller, please.
Yes, we have 2 more callers. Caller 448, you are next. Caller 448, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hi, this is Eric Vief in District 3 on South Gallup Street. I just want to echo what many others have said, Kyle, Corey, David, and others that have called in my opposition to amendments 1 through 4. I think housing, community character, all these things that we're talking about are obviously very complicated issues and ones that Littleton has wrestled with a lot of for a long time now. But I've been a part of the public process for this particular issue, and I've been really impressed by the efforts of city staff and consultants in gathering different input from different citizens and trying to balance all these competing and complicated issues with one another. And I think they've done a great job in the phase 2 as currently proposed. I moved here 6 years ago with my wife. I actually grew up in Littleton, but moved back to Littleton 6 years ago, and we were able to afford it. But like many others have said, would probably not be able to afford it now. And I certainly know many others that have not been able to. And I just think supply of housing is a huge part of that story. It's not the only part of that story, but we need to be making sure that we build a community that has ample supply of housing that is integrated into our current city in a thoughtful, well-designed way, which is exactly what I think this plan has done. A downtown is an essential place for those people to move into our town, to move back to our town. And I think that I fully endorse the phase 2 as currently proposed in achieving those goals. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Eric. Next caller.
Our next caller is caller 301. Caller 301, you have been unmuted. Please press *6 to begin speaking.
Good evening, City Council. This is Catherine Roy with Love in the Name of Christ, Love Inc. at 5745 South Bannock Street. And I want to just share with you that we are seeing people every day through calls that come into our helpline that are in need of adequate housing. And in our understanding of this issue, we see that the 5-story height allowance for the buildings in this part of our city will actually provide more resources for generations to come. We absolutely are in agreement with the comments that have been made by Corey, Maureen, Kim, Rob, Julia, and others, and would oppose amendments 1 through 4. We do believe that through a 5-story height allowance and the different opportunities that come with that, it does achieve the livability and transportation goals that have been articulated and will allow for more workforce that's needed in the downtown businesses. We also believe that, as affirmed by the Historic Preservation Board and Planning Commission, it will preserve the character and compatibility that we so love and people come to Littleton for. So I just thank you for taking this time to hear from constituents, and in our case, this organization that serves the citizens of Littleton. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. Sama, did we have any more?
Thank you, Mayor. Those are all the hands we had raised in our queue. I'm sorry, Mayor, we did have one hand come up. We had a few people who hadn't spoken.
Let's have it.
All right, our last caller then is caller 819. Caller 819, you have been unmuted. Please begin speaking.
Hi, Council. This is Pam Chedbourne. I sent an email, and it's longer than I can say, but let me say the summary of what you just heard is, I believe, or we believe, there is no data to show, and in fact, a couple of speakers have mentioned that just adding housing doesn't mean it's going to be affordable or accessible. Unless you have regulation, Council, at the same time that you create these entitlements, we will not get affordable, accessible housing from this change. You, Council, are responsible for doing your due diligence on this, and it has not been presented at Planning Commission, at Historic Preservation Board, or to you. I have watched all of them, and the other speakers are simply wrong. The only technical analysis you got was about whether developers can develop. This is a horrible change, and I'm so sorry that I saw everything that went into it, but take out everything in ULUC plus the map and add it back to ULUC process. And then let's just focus on the phase 2, and there's a couple of issues. The form-based code doesn't work well with the use-based code. This is not simplification. This will be much harder for staff to use. Mistakes are not just possible, but likely, which could lead to lawsuits. Take out the discretionary allowances for the city manager and community development director. This is very rare. This is very dangerous. It is not appropriate. We should abide by the rule of law, and if the law isn't working, fix it. Do not give administrative power, especially to staff, especially when it removes visibility and power from the people, especially when the consequences can be that adjacent uses and structures will negatively affect the city for 70 or 80 years to come. For council, the ballooning scope of this ULUC stuff added to the Title 10 changes was made after COVID-19 meeting restrictions. This avoided public engagement, and you shouldn't do it, council. You represent us. We in District 1 haven't been engaged with this.
30 seconds.
There is no assurance that this open market building stuff will work. The financing of development projects is not a 40-year investment in a community. These guys get in, they get the first flush of profits, and they sell to the derivatives market within 10 years. The city is left for 60 years with the results. You have no financial analysis from the city's point of view for the sketchy plan in this package. You have to demand that from staff and hear it before you vote on this. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Pam. Sama, do we have any other callers?
No, thank you, Mayor. That was our last hand raised.
Thank you very much. Then I will close the public hearing at 7:56. Council, open it up to questions and discussions. We have a first city manager. Would you like to add?
If I may, Mayor, I want to address a question raised by Council Member Elrod early on in the discussion here about process and what happens with a map and potential changes. And I'll let our city attorney and also Kathleen Osher maybe comment on what I'm about to share here. I think the intent here or the recommendation on the part of staff is that the council consider taking the map and adopting that this evening. The process that follows this is a notification about a rezoning process. And I do believe that is an opportunity for us as staff to share with the potential of what could be non-conforming uses. And that if people have an issue with that we could bring that information to the Planning Commission and certainly to the council later on in December. That would be one opportunity then to modify the map that's attached to the process here this evening. I think the last opportunity, quite honestly, staff is referring to is perhaps we'll learn some other things here about maybe non-conforming use in general for the entire city as one example that could be part of the ULUC at the very end of the process. So there's probably a couple of opportunities to kind of manage what could be map amendments. So with that, I'd like maybe the city attorney and Kathleen Osher maybe to comment on that quickly, if that's okay, Mayor.
Is
Please.
that like ladies first? So the only comments, I would just reemphasize what City Manager Mark Ralph just shared. I do think that there will be additional public input that you'll receive as part of the exercise in rezoning. I think that you will also benefit from a recommendation from your Planning Commission. So do you think that that is the right direction and what staff would recommend?
Yeah, and to echo everything that Mark and Kathleen mentioned, during the map amendment process that takes place over the next couple months, it's a public hearing in front of Planning Commission as well as first and second reading in front of City Council. That would be, I guess, your more immediate opportunity to refine kind of the boundaries of the various character zones. And so I would probably save those conversations for when we get to hear from those properties that are affected to get their reasons for why they should be part of a particular character zone or not, and wait for that opportunity. And additionally, as Kathleen mentioned, we'll still have an opportunity as we go through the entirety of the ULUC process over the next year.
Okay. Thank you. All right, let's get it back to council now. Council, do we have a motion at this point? We'll open it up for discussion. We have Councilmember Grove.
Are you ready for amendments or do you want more discussion first?
Sure, you can make an, well, we have to have a motion before we do amendments.
Right. But if there's more discussion, I'll wait.
Sure, let's have some discussion here. I don't see a whole lot. Councilmember Milliman, I don't know why I don't see your hand there, but go ahead.
Sorry, do you want me to, I move to approve on second reading, approving phase 2 amendments to Title 10 of the City Code relative to downtown development with the 7 conditions recommended by Historical Preservation Board and Planning Commission.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Elrod. Opening up for discussion, Councilmember Elrod.
Okay, I wasn't ready for
Oh, sorry, the only hand is up.
I'll take my moment. So I think we've done a really great job on this product and this document. It was very extensive, many working hours with staff, with board members, with citizens, and yes, even despite COVID, there has been significant effort of outreach in many different forms. So I do feel that there has been diligence around this. With that being said, as we heard this evening, and as we've discussed at our last study session, there are still some amendments that I think are that warrant some further discussion here tonight. So with that being said, may I make an amendment, or would you like to go around for further discussion?
Well, let's hear from Councilmember Grove. She's the only one that has her hand up, and then we can come back to you. Thank you.
I just kind of want to say to, generally speaking, from the citizens that we heard from, I hear them. It seems like a very well-coordinated effort. It's a bit at odds from what I heard when I was in the process of campaigning, and the many people that wanted to keep Littleton quaint and have that small town feel and the character. And we're not pleased with things that were going along and the way buildings were getting higher and bigger and more massive, and didn't feel that that was symbolic or what they wanted for downtown. Those people are not here this evening, unfortunately. I also think that one thing that we have to acknowledge, unfortunately, is higher, bigger lot line to lot line buildings, massive buildings, unfortunately do not equal affordability. Those, unless it's mandated, those those additional level and additional floor would not be assumed to be for people that maybe were in a lower income status. We also, I think it's very important, just generally speaking, that throughout this process, we did hear from our consultant that was very an advocate for our developers and how certain buildings did not pencil. As we've seen in the past 6 years from the 26 buildings that have been either gone up or approved, only one of them was 5 stories. And most of them were either 3 stories, 65% of them, 17 of them. The highest one there was a couple, 4 of them that were over 46 feet. All the rest of them, 85% of them were under 43 feet, according to the analysis that staff did. These penciled just fine. So I don't understand why we have to have bigger and more massive buildings in our downtown area in order for them to be economically viable. And when the time's right, that's just kind of my overview. I will continue on with some amendments.
Good, thank you. We'll go to Councilmember Fay and then Councilmember Elrod. Whenever you're ready, just raise your hand up, please. Councilmember Fay?
Yes, we seem to have an assumption going on here with comments that more stories equals more for affordability, inclusivity, diversity. I would like to point out a 5-story building we already have in downtown Littleton, and that's the one called The Grove, or renamed Vita. One side of that is 5 stories. That is the farthest thing possible from all of those words. Rents at $3,000 to $4,000 a month. And so the assumption that 5 stories equals affordability, all of these things is not working. without other requirements, which we are not talking about. That's all.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Fay. All right. Well, I guess at this point, I'll go ahead and I'll take my turn. There are no other hands up yet. I too am concerned about the higher and more density buildings going up. It does change the character of downtown. As Councilmember just mentioned, a building that was shocking to everybody, and to have other buildings similar to that go up on the north side of Main Street, it's concerning to me. Also, I'm concerned about the parking that situation that we could create to make things even worse. But we think now is a perceived problem, could become a real problem. So I'm concerned about that as well. Any other council member like to speak at this time? Oh, I would like to add before I move on, is that we always talk about affordable housing. We hear that a lot. We heard it during our campaign, but I didn't hear anybody say that they were willing to sell their house for less than they could get for it. They all want to make a lot of money on their home, but yet we're all concerned about affordable housing, but yet few are willing to sell their house for less than market value. Councilmember Milliman, then Elrod.
Sorry, thank you. I just want to say that I want to say thank you again to the city staff for choosing an amazing consultant group to help us formulate this and update our so outdated code from the 70s, 80s, to help move our city forward into the next 20 years. Downtown is an urban area with a historic charm, Main Street and Alamo. I think we have the expertise of the consultants, of our city staff. We have expertise on Historic Preservation Board, Planning Commission. They all put together this document. It is good code. It is much better code than we've had in the past, which has allowed some of the development to happen that has not been compatible with our downtown area. We're a growing city. We do need the extra housing. We do need it. We'll need it all throughout the entire city of Littleton, not just downtown. We owe it to the businesses, to our community in downtown to support that. And I personally am going to support the Phase 2 amendments as they were presented and voted on and supported by HPB and Planning Commission. And I will just say, I still don't understand this fear of heights. If you have an extra floor, if it goes from 4 to 5 stories, maybe it doesn't make it affordable, but it gives us the ability to possibly make it affordable. It gives us the chance. It gives those developers the chance to put in affordable housing. And to not allow that, I think, is a huge disservice to our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Elrod.
I want to address a couple of things on height, even though much has been said on this. There was a comment, I think, from one of the citizens about, an ask to not reduce height. And I do want to just point out that currently in most of our downtown area today for our CA district, the height limit is 40 feet. So in fact, even going to the 4 stories, that is 55 feet. So even the 4-story areas, which are in DTA, of course, the MU, we're already 15 feet above what is currently allowed downtown, except for where there might have been exceptions. And in fact, the only buildings that are over the 55 feet that would represent 4 stories are the Arapahoe County building, ACC, and the Old Mill. So when we kind of look at scale and what does 5 stories look like, I think we really have to look at what does the total height look like. So that's what's more of a apples to apples comparison to what we experience and see now and even allow now. in downtown Littleton. So know that even going up to the 4 stories that's being proposed here at 55 is actually higher than what we are zoned for now. So we are in fact up zoning as opposed to what may have been understood as down zoning. The other comments I saw through some of the emails was the, trust our HPB, trust our planning board, and please understand there is no lack of respect or effort in their decision making. I think it really, each board has brought to the table something. So we as council will bring our perspective as well. And I know I definitely speak for myself in that, and I'm sure other council members that have served on the planning board and historic preservation, how much we value their work, their expertise in this. But that does not preclude an opportunity for other areas that we may bring forward as council based on our experiences as well as what we also hear from our citizens. So that's all I'll say on that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Council, we have no one has their hand up. Councilmember Grove.
Since I think discussion is over, I'd like to make an amendment.
Okay.
Okay. I further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development under 10-2-18A, Purpose 1, to add the yellow highlighted text to the first sentence so it reads, the DT, downtown district, which is centered around a National Register Historic District and local landmark district, provides for residential, non-residential, and mixed-use development within the city's downtown, and add 10-2-18A, Purpose 2. Main Street is an historic district with numerous historic landmarks. Any new development should complement historic character of the buildings from the turn of the century commercial use area, Main Street, or housing and commercial buildings around a commercial Main Street, parentheses DT, DNR, and DMU, from 1890 to 1955.
We have a motion. It dies for a lack of second. Council, is there any further discussion? Councilmember Fay. You are muted. Thank you.
I think I'll second that. I was in a quandary there. Did we vote on the primary ordinance before?
We have a main motion, and now we're looking at amending it, possibly.
I second.
Okay, Councilmember Grove, you have been seconded. Faye had trouble getting in to second that. So we do have a motion and a second.
And I'd like to explain why I decided to make this amendment.
The floor is yours.
This is not for zoning. This is just for the overall introduction to the character areas downtown. Any developer may not realize the importance of our Main Street, the importance we place on our landmarks. This lets them know we value our historic heritage. It was mentioned that we are going through a process for an additional historic district. I don't think this verbiage in any way precludes that, nor does this verbiage any way limit architecture or limit height. When we are talking about height, we're only talking about maximums. Height can be lower if they want. Once the final ULUC code is adopted, this introductory language may change if we do get another historic district. But this was actually written when I reached out to certain members of HPB because I was concerned about the lack of focus in the overview section. and they worked with me to help me with this verbiage. So I hope I can get the support of council on this as an interim measure until we can look at additional historic districts.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Millen.
Appreciate the spirit of this amendment. I've been vocal in the past about wanting an all-inclusive historic district for Main Street and Alamo. That process, or at least the process of developing an historic district is underway, and my hope is that it results in that all-inclusive district. I agree with Councilmember Grove. I'm not exactly sure how or why this would impede that effort that staff has undertaken. But I do want to just respect staff's wishes here that the process they have underway just be, I don't know if uninhibited is the right word, but that it just be free to unfold. So while I value historic preservation and while I do appreciate the spirit of this amendment, I'm going to oppose it just for the reasons that Kathleen Osher had articulated earlier in the meeting.
Thank you. Council Member Milliman.
Thanks, Scott. I would agree with you and Pam. I think establishing a historic district is super vitally important to our downtown area. Kathleen, would you be able to, I don't know if it's appropriate to ask you to just review what you said earlier as to why staff is recommending not to support this amendment?
Happy to do that. The reason that staff is not recommending the amendment is that council has directed a historical preservation board to begin that process. They've outlined a timeline, a number of steps, and we feel like the results of that process will probably lend itself well to making any additions and changes, and would recommend that both public process and thoughtful, intentional steps that council directed HPP to take to lead.
Thank you, and I support staff's stance on this.
Thank you. Council Member Elrod.
Thank you. I too can appreciate the spirit of this, and I voiced this at our study session last week, where my concern was, especially in that second paragraph, that it started becoming too prescriptive and formally defining which historical aspects of our downtown we are looking to be in character in. And as we know, historic changes over time. What was once not historic becomes historic and may be iconic. And so we have to just allow this document to grow and accommodate over time, and not be so prescriptive, especially here in the purpose. I do think that first sentence was gives the spirit and the intent, but I do the second sentence or paragraph there, I think, becomes too prescriptive and too restrictive of specific landmarks or streets for that matter. So for that reason, I would not support this.
Okay. Council, if we have no other comments, why don't we go ahead and put this amendment to a vote? City Clerk, could you read the amendment for us, please?
Absolutely. Councilmember Grove moved and Councilmember Fay seconded to further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development under 10-2-18 paren A, purpose paren 1, to add the yellow highlighted text to the first sentence so it reads, the DT Downtown District, which is centered around a National Register Historic District and local landmark district, provides for residential, non-residential, and mixed-use development within the city's downtown. And add 10-2-18 paren A, purpose paren 2, to Main Street is an historic district with numerous historic landmarks. Any new development should complement historic character of buildings from the turn of the century commercial area, Main Street, or housing and commercial buildings around the commercial Main Street, DT, DNR, and DMU from 1890 to 1955.
Thank you, City Clerk. Okay, Council, so let's be clear on our vote. So a thumb up is to approve this amendment, and a thumbs down is to not approve the amendment. Ready? Vote.
The vote is 5-2 with Council members Grove and Fay voting yes. The motion fails.
Good, thank you very much. Council, do we have any more amendments that want to be introduced? Councilmember Elrod.
Thank you. I'd like to propose an amendment. I'd like to this is an amendment to the map. We did talk about this last week. I further proposed amendment Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development under Figure 10-2-18, character area map to extend the downtown transition area southward to Little Creek.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, it dies for a lack of second.
No.
Nope. Oh, okay. Councilmember Grove does have a second.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. For some reason, our seconds are being slow tonight, but we are getting them. Okay, Councilmember Elrod, would you like to discuss?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So while I know the city manager said this is something we can address at the next meeting, this one, the recommendation I'm making here about the character map adjustment is less about the potential impact to existing businesses or properties there now, because again, in the other scenario we talked about earlier, we were actually removing uses from current property owners. That's not what this is. Again, going to a downtown transition area is providing the same opportunity that is there now with our current zoning. But what's important about this being a downtown transition area, as it's stated in the objectives for the downtown transition area, that the uses in this area support a mix of complementary uses, including commercial, office, and residential. So it's still a very dynamic and vibrant zoning. And more importantly, it also has preservation as an important element. And it speaks to, for preservation, it's where historic assets exist, preservation will be pursued prior to demolition. Why is this so important here? Because in this particular transition area, which I am recommending goes down to Little's Creek, is the old mill, which is a visual icon for the city of Littleton, as well as a historical icon for the city of Littleton, as well as Richard and Angeline Little's home. So that, in conjunction with just the natural demarcation of Little's Creek, that the spirit, consistency, and feeling and character that you get throughout that area would all come down to that block all the way to Little's Creek. So again, I am making the recommendation that downtown transition area boundary abut Little's Creek.
Thank you. We have Councilmember Milliman and then Grove.
Thanks. And I can definitely appreciate or understand wanting to redraw that map line and taking it to the southern boundary to Little's Creek. My question is, though, again, a lot of work or planning and data was driven on this, on how this map was laid out. So I'm asking Brian, the consultant, if he can answer a question: what, if any, fiscal and or unintended impacts if we redraw this map boundary line will that have to that area?
Yes. Let me get to the map on my screen. So generally speaking, extending the DTA in the manner that has been suggested as an amendment, extending the DTA down to Little's Creek would sort of overtake some area that is in the current draft of the map designated as DMU. The DTA has a buffering effect from the Main Street character area from the more intense DMU. So generally speaking, and this isn't, my firm at least didn't do a fiscal analysis or something like that. I know that another firm that's been involved in this process did, would generally have slightly less intense development in the area that becomes part of the DTA rather than the DMU, due to, again, the sort of buffering effect that the DTA has for the Main Street area. I hope that gets a little closer to answering your question.
Okay.
I think so. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Grove.
I would support this amendment because it does provide more of a buffer, especially if we look at an historic district in that area. It's less intense. It allows for lower buildings, which would maintain that character as it moves into Main Street, where there were additional commercial areas way back when, still are, where there's housing that complement the Main Street area. So I would support it.
Thank you. Okay, we have no more questions. So council, we have a motion and a second. City Clerk, Council
Sorry,
Member,
I've got my hand.
Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that for me, the natural boundary here, the natural sort of point of demarcation is Little's Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it a little bit awkward that the DMU sort of encroaches into the DTA north of Little's Creek. I think it would make more sense that the DTA come down to Little's Creek as Councilmember Elrod is proposing. So I'm going to support this amendment.
Thank you. Councilmember Elrod.
Yeah, I'll just I'll make a comment regarding potential impact from an economic viability. While I can't obviously, if I'm not speaking for the consultants, but when we just kind of look at the area, we're almost looking at maybe half a block, and I don't even know that it's that. In comparison to the holistic DMU area and where truly intense and more substantial DMU type buildings would be most viable is probably not in that little sliver, because there's also the limitations of that Little's Creek, which we're not going to build over. So I think just looking at it just visually, it's call it a sliver within the greater DMU. So if we were to consider any area that would not have a significant risk on some of that economic viability, I would say this does not. And I think this particular area really would be a treasure to maintain within more of the character that is defined by DTA.
Right. Thank you. City Clerk, if you could go ahead and read back the amendment, and we will take it to a vote.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Elrod moved and Councilmember Grove seconded to further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development under Figure 10-2-18 Character Area Map to extend the downtown transition area, DTA, southward to Littles Creek.
Great, thank you very much, Council. That is the amendment. So again, a thumbs up is to approve, a thumbs down is to deny. So ready, vote.
The vote is 5 in favor with Council members Milliman and Fay voting no. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much, Council. All right, so let's, Council Member Grove, your hand is up.
I'd like to make another amendment.
Okay.
I further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development under Table 10-4-18, parentheses M, apartment building type standards for the minimum sloping roof, form, hip, or gable as a percentage of the building in plan view in the DTA, column change NA to 25% for roof slope change, NA to 512 or steeper, 312 or steeper for porches, add-ons, etc.
I will second the amendment. So Council, we have a motion and a seconded by me.
Should I continue on and talk about my rationale?
Yes, please.
In all the building types, I think there was 9 total building types. The roof slope, if they had a roof slope, it was described in the table above. And in some of these building types listed here, it just seems like it was left out. Seems to be almost like an error. But this means that apartments would have to have a slope, which adds, I think, the character of the building.
Great, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I'm going to support this. I think this was almost a borderline administrative fix, and staff's recommending it. I think it's a pretty simple decision for me to make.
Great, thank you. Council Member Milliman.
So just to get clarification, this means that all apartment buildings would have to have some kind of a slope. They wouldn't be allowed to have a flat roof. Is that what this is being proposed?
Mark, would you like to address that?
The short answer is yes, per the percentages in the amendment.
Thank you. All right, does that answer your question?
It does, thank you. And I'm not going to support this amendment.
Okay. Any other members? If you could raise your hand. The reason I ask you to raise the icon thing is because I can't always see council members on the screen. So that's why that's important. Council Member Elrod and then Grove.
So I do see that staff recommends this. When I had picked up on this as well, whether this was an error or intentional. So can staff speak to whether this was an omission as initially intended, or was it intentional that there was to not be a roof slope in that particular area?
Michael?
Maybe I would probably look to Kathleen Osher or perhaps one of the
And I was actually going to call on Mike, so he's here already.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Go for it, Michael.
Thank you. That wasn't intended that the slope roofs be confined to the neighborhood residential area, as is currently in our design standards. We did not intend to transfer that to the transitional area, as the amendment suggests. But in light of the reviewing that amendment, we recommended approval of it.
Thank you. Councilmember Grove. She took her hand down. Okay, so we have Councilmember Milliman, and then Grove.
So just to clarify again, if there is a slope, even a minor slope to these roofs, this could impact future development for multifamily housing or limiting housing units within a multifamily housing. Could somebody help me understand that?
Michael, can you address our city manager?
I'd probably just look to Kathleen or one of the staff members, or perhaps our consultant team.
So if I may, in terms of the height, Kelly, going to your question, so if you add a sloped roof, it is going to add to height, and that could potentially limit another unit being up there if you have pitch. Brian, do you want to add to that?
No, I agree with that. That's exactly what I would have said.
Thank you.
So you're saying then that this could impact adding that little bit of roof slope could impact the number of stories for a multifamily housing. Thank you.
And I would just refine maybe that answer with having a slope on a roof will reduce the amount of usable space on that floor, which could have gone to housing or whatever the case may be.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Elrod.
Sorry to belabor this, Mike. This question comes back to you. You didn't necessarily answer, well, you did answer my question, but my follow-up then is, you state in your recommendation that this is consistent with discussion and direction of Historical Preservation Board and Planning Commission. So was there a discussion of slope, roof slope for DTA, and this particular slope is in line with that discussion, or what exactly was, that discussion, I guess, from HPB and planning on this?
My recollection of that, Councilmember Elrod, was that they requested that the roof slopes that were just implemented with phase 1 be included with phase 2, particularly for the downtown neighborhood area. And I do not recall that they recommended that extend beyond the downtown neighborhood area. We did put that in with the downtown neighborhood area. And then the second suggestion was that extend to the transition area, which seemed fine with us.
Yeah, and I would just say that's exactly right. Like, we see consistency with the very lengthy conversation that they had about slope roof, particularly through the phase 1 amendments, and that we saw some consistency there, and why staff recommended this change.
All right. Anything else, Councilmember Elrod? Good. Any Councilmember Grove?
Okay, now that I look at this and how it's written by staff, what I'm trying to say is, if you look at all the roof slopes, you have a description of the roof slope, and at the top it tells the percent. Those percents have been left off in many cases. That's what happened. And I don't know if that was administrative and that's assumed, but in the family detached, if I could point here, you have a description and then you have the percentage. Description and the percentage was left off. It was administrative. And I don't know if we're talking administrative at this point. And it's done throughout. In many cases, if you look at the single family detached, if you look at the single family in DTA, they didn't have the percentage on top of it. So it just looked like it was left out. But I'm afraid now, because the way this is written, same with the multiplex, all the different types of buildings, it just, like I say, it was just left out, with the exception of apartments. It was just like, it looks like a mistake. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I mean, all of them, live, work, commercial, all of them. So why have
Jennifer?
description without a percentage? It doesn't make sense.
Jennifer, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so going back to Mike's initial comment that when we were talking about slope, we were really looking at the downtown neighborhood area, the DNR area. And in the DNR area, the building types that do not have the percentages in that chart, and Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, are building types that are not permitted in DNR, which is why they didn't get assigned a percentage.
But this is, I'm talking DNA. These are all DNA.
DTA?
DTA.
Okay.
Yeah. With the exception of apartments, it just looks like an error. Like if you, I mean, it's just in DMU, you have a description and then you have a percentage, and in DTA you have a description and no percentage above it. And I think that's what you want. I mean, that's what you have in the other ones.
And what page are you looking at?
Okay, for example, if you look at page, I'm looking at 154. At the bottom, you have a description, building form and orientation, roof slope. There's a description, but there's no percentage. And the same thing with 146. There's a description, but no percentage. Is it description in lieu of the percentage? Now I'm getting confused. Because in DMU, there's a percentage, a minimum roof slope, and then the description is gone. I mean, I thought it was just a typo, but maybe it's not.
I think I could add a little bit to that.
Okay, good, help.
Yes, council member, you're correct that in those two sets of rows that are in every table, which are a subset of roof form, if there is a number in one of the cells, then there should be a description, as you said, in the one beneath it. It shouldn't ever be that there would be an NA for the row that reads minimum sloping roof form, hip or gable as a percentage of building in plan view. There should never be an NA in that row, but have verbiage in the cell underneath it, and vice versa.
So we just need to make sure that then this doesn't have to just do with apartments. It has to do with all building types. So maybe I need to withdraw and reword my amendment to say for all building types where there's a description of roof slope, there should also be a corresponding percentage on the row above it of at least 25%. Is that correct? Is that what the intention of what I'm trying to do, Brian?
Yes. Well, there should at least be a percentage on in the cell above it.
Right.
Sometimes that percentage is 50% in the more residential building types, single family attached, and I think duplexes as well.
Right.
But I think should be that 25 is the number, the kind of alternate number when it's not 50. The other building types tend to have the 25% when there is a roof slope required.
Right, like townhouses, it was done, townhomes is done correctly. They have the description, the percentage above, but some of the other ones weren't. So should I withdraw my amendment and redo it so that we get it correct?
That's what I was, how would you change this amendment? What would you change?
I'd say for all building types where there's a roof slope description, there should be a corresponding percentage in the cell above it.
You're adding that to the amendment.
Replacing it. So I think I need to withdraw my amendment because apartments don't have that requirement. So it actually doesn't even pertain to apartments because it has no description. So it doesn't need a corresponding percentage above it. I would like it, but that's fine.
Sure. Well, now Robert Rules of Order, and some will
We have
say
to
that
vote on this
it
one?
allows you to pull it, and others say it don't. I prefer that we just vote on this amendment, and if you want to add a new amendment, that would be different.
Okay.
So, Council, we have an amendment that she would like to withdraw.
Was it seconded?
It was seconded, yes.
Okay. According to the City of Littleton's legislative rules, if the person who seconded wishes to withdraw as well, then it can be withdrawn. But
So
you're
Mayor,
right.
that would be you.
Then let's
Typically,
go.
Robert's Rules of Order would say
Okay,
that.
if that's what our rules state allows that, then let's do that.
Okay.
Okay. We have 3 more people that want to speak. But if we can just go ahead and withdraw that amendment entirely at this point.
Thank you.
And I'll wait and redo it when you're ready.
Okay, so we have hands up regarding this, the one we were just discussing, or do we want to move on to something else? I'm good. I think Councilmember Milliman had her hand up. She just withdrew it. I still have my hand up, and then Elrod, and then the city manager. City manager, why don't you go first?
If I may suggest, Mayor, could we just take about a 10-minute break and let me visit with staff a little bit about this specific issue here, just to make sure that we have something to recommend.
Yes, that sounds good. Okay, so right now it is 8:46. So if we come back at 8:51.
Before we leave,
or
Jerry,
let's do a 10-minute. Sorry,
Jerry, can I ask, once you've met with staff, could you recommend a verbiage for an amendment based on what we've just talked about, based on these tables? Okay,
Correct.
thank you. Thank you.
We're already working.
So it is 8:46. So let's come back at 8:56, 10 minutes. right, we are back in session. It is 8:56. City Manager, did you have a comment you want to make at this point?
Yeah, if I may suggest, Mayor and Council, let's go ahead and consider another amendment and allow staff to work on that one and come back to it.
Right, I agree. And then we have several hands up right now. We have Mayor Pro Tem, the Milliman, and then Grove. So we'll start with the Mayor Pro Tem.
I've got another proposed amendment. The council's ready to move on.
We are ready for another amendment.
So this is proposed amendment 5 in our packet, which I'm actually going to parse into 2 separate amendments. The reason being that I think a couple aspects of this proposed amendment really belong to other council members. And so I'll start with what I was most interested in and move on from there. So I further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development and 10-2-18E parking and access as follows. Under 10-2-18E 3I, multifamily dwellings not including single family attached. For multifamily and mixed-use developments, for example, a standalone apartment building type or buildings, 1 space shall be required per unit.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Edgar.
I'm sorry. Was that you, Councilmember Driscoll?
Yep.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Councilmember Driscoll. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to go ahead and open up discussion?
Yeah, so my thinking on this is that our consultants have told us that how we accommodate the automobile is a main driver of character, not just in our downtown, but in general. It has perhaps a greater opportunity than any other character input to either enhance character or to erode it. And that's why so much of their conversation in past Envision Studios focused on the visual of their spectrum from urban core to rural. And most of how we define a character area is determined by how we accommodate the automobile. So by reducing the parking ratio to 1 space per unit, we take control over developing parking out of the hands of developers, who I believe are going to do unsightly surface parking, and we place it in the hands of the community, hopefully in partnership. I would expect, or I would hope, for partnerships between a BID or a DDA, perhaps ACC, et cetera. It lets us have far more control over siting and over design of our future parking. And I think that we can use it as an opportunity to enhance character rather than detract from character, which I think, you know, a new surface parking lot with each new development would create. I think it would erode character. I think there's an ancillary benefit here too, that by reducing the parking ratio, we make it simpler for certain kinds of developments to pencil and to be economically viable. So I think that primarily this is a win for the community, is why I'm supporting it, or why I'm proposing it rather.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Grove.
As I understand that this is just a change from 1 parking space per 300 feet to 1 per unit. Am I correct? I mean, it's just a change in a little bit more leeway.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem. Did you want to respond?
Yeah. So we've had parking requirements presented to us in 2 ways for residential developments or developments that include residential as a component of the development. We've had it presented to us as a ratio of parking per dwelling unit, and we've also, with regard to commercial developments, had it presented to us as a parking lot per certain amount of square footage. So this is obviously directed at the housing types that are in the proposed amendment. And yeah, it would reduce the parking ratio down to 1. Does that answer your question?
Good. Thank you very much for clarifying that, Scott. Councilmember Milliman.
So Brian or Jennifer, maybe you could answer this question. What are similar developments in other cities? Can you remind us again what their parking ratios are right now?
Councilmember Milliman, I'm just gonna weigh in. So based on the findings of EPS and working through that process, we were seeing somewhere in the range of 0.75, 0.85 per unit to 1.1. For ratios. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could just add real quick too, I really don't think that this is going to reduce the amount of available parking in the downtown football. I think whether developing parking is primarily in the hands of private developers or primarily in the hands of the city and its partners, we're going to end up with a comparable amount of parking. I just think this gives the city control over siting and design, as I mentioned.
Good. Thank you. Council, is there any other comments on this? All right, we do have a motion and a seconded by Councilmember Driscoll. If we're ready to vote, let's go ahead and do it. Thumbs up. Well, if you could please read the city clerk, if you could please read the motion.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Malin moved and Councilmember Driscoll seconded to further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development and 10-2-18E parking and access as follows. Under 10-2-18 paren E 3 paren A 1, multiple family dwellings not including single family attached for multifamily and mixed use developments. For example, a standalone apartment building type or buildings, 1 space shall be required per unit.
Good. Thank you, Council. That is the motion for this amendment. Thumbs up would be to approve, and a thumbs down is to deny. Ready, vote.
The vote is 6 in favor with Councilmember Fay voting no. The motion carries.
Okay. All righty, Council. We have Councilmember Elrod.
I'd like to propose an amendment for the second piece of this, I guess. I further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development and 10-2-18E parking and access. Or let me skip to under 10-2-18E parentheses 5, remove the planning commission condition and restore the minimum required off-street surface parking spaces by up to 50% of required spaces. Yes, that's it.
Is that the end? Mm-hmm. There's a period on there.
Karina, could I ask you to read that again, please?
Sure, let me try.
Thank you.
Okay. I further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development and 10-2-18E 5, remove the planning commission condition and restore the minimum required off-street surface parking spaces by up to 50% of required spaces.
Thank you.
Okay, Council, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Oh, Councilmember Milliman, you are seconding it, I take it? Okay, thank you. So we have a motion by Councilmember Elrod and a second by Councilmember Milliman. Councilmember Elrod?
Thank you. So I'm proposing this change to revert back to 50%. This was something that I asked the consultants to go back and look at. The purpose of the 50% is to allow for different incentives for when development happens, to encourage other uses of transportation. So limiting it to the 20%, essentially, you can achieve that with one incentive. To use an example, proximity to RTD station, that alone could get you to that 20%, which really doesn't give you any incentive to do anything beyond that, versus the 50% would not only be the proximity to the RTD station, but on top of that, an incentive to provide RTD passes. So I think when you group some of these incentives together is when you help to change and instill a behavior within our community to use other modes of transportation. So I appreciate the consultants coming back and studying this request and recommending approval for it.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Grove.
Support leaving it at 20% as suggested by the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Anyone else? So Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I'm going to support this. I think that the types of incentives we're going to see are the types of incentives we want to see as a community. Things like ride sharing, things like bicycle parking, things like electrical vehicle charging stations. I think those are all beneficial to the community. I want to see them happen. I want to see the types of incentives we end up getting here, or the types of offsets that we end up getting here.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Grove, you still have your hand up. I'm thinking you don't want a question. Councilmember Milliman.
And I support this amendment too as well. I think we need to start thinking again 20, 30 years from now. Modes of transportation are changing, and they're changing fast. And I think this is going to address that. So thank you, Karina, for making that amendment.
Thank you. Anyone else? Cool. All right, City Clerk, if you could read the motion for us.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Elrod moved and Councilmember Milliman seconded to further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development, and under 10-2-18, paren E, paren 5, remove the Planning Commission condition and restore the minimum required off-street surface parking spaces by up to 50% of required spaces.
All right, Council, that is our motion for the amendment. Thumbs up is approve, thumbs down is opposed. Ready to vote? Vote.
The vote is 4-3 with Council members Grove, Fay, and Driscoll voting no. The motion carried.
Okay, Council. Do we have any other amendments that want to be made at this point? Councilmember Elrod.
Okay, I'll take the third one that was on here. I further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development and 10-2-18E5B, change the distance of proposed development to be located within 1,000 feet of a RTD light rail station.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Council Pro Tem Millen has second. Councilmember Elrod.
This one again simply was a discussion we had at the study session. There were a few items in parking that we really wanted the consultants to come back with a recommendation. This was one that also the Planning Commission, I believe, had gone back and forth. So I think it was that the Planning Commission recommended 1,300. So we're bringing it back down to 1,000 per the recommendation of the consultant. So I think that is more feasible. So that is the recommendation here.
Great, thank you. Anyone else like to chime in? All right, City Clerk, could you read back the motion for us?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Elrod moved and Mayor Pro Tem Malin seconded to further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development, and under 10-2-18 paren E paren 5 paren B, change the distance of a proposed development to be located within 1,000 feet of an RTD light rail station.
Great. All right, Council, thumbs up is to approve, thumbs down is to oppose. Ready, vote.
The vote is 6 in favor with Councilmember Fay voting no. The motion carried.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Grove.
I'd like to make another amendment.
Okay.
Are you ready?
So just 1 second. City Clerk, what amendment number are we going to call this?
So currently,
we have 1, 2, 5.
Well, we have, I've been numbering them as we take them. We've done amendment 1, 2, we withdrew 3. Amendment 1 failed, amendment 2 passed, 3 was withdrawn, 4 passed, 5 passed, and 6 passed.
Yeah, I think those are different than what we have on our information. I think the one proposed that passed from Councilmember Millen, Mayor Pro Tem Millen, was
right. I understand
5.
that, Mayor. I'm counting them in the order that we're taking them because that's how they'll be reflected in the minutes.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to, okay. So Council, are you following along there? So we have different numbers that are being used that'll show up in our minutes that are actually within our documents here. So maybe, Colleen, if you could somehow just reflect to which one it was in our documents, that might be helpful for clarification.
Happy to do that.
I appreciate it. So again, this is amendment number what?
Well, if we're going strictly on the number of amendments we've made this evening, this would be amendment number 7.
7. Okay, thank you. All righty, Councilmember Grove, I'm sorry.
I'd like to make another amendment if you're ready.
Let's hear it.
Okay. And this, for virtue, so we know where we are on the packet, it's under Amendment 4 in the packet, but I realize in the minutes it will be different. I further recommend the proposed amended code.
You are cutting out big time.
Okay, let me get closer.
Thank you.
Okay. I further amend the proposed amendment Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development under Table 10-4-18 M, apartment type standards, Table 10-14-18 O, mixed use building type standards, and Table 10-4-18 Q, office institutional building type standards, change maximum height, parentheses, number of stories and feet, close parentheses, from 5 stories, 65 feet, to 4 stories, 55 feet.
Okay, we have a motion. Council, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Councilmember Fay has second. Okay, Councilmember Grove.
I think we've talked about a lot of these points. I think I'll just kind of summarize real quickly. When we look at the development we've had over the last 6 years and the 16 projects and the ones that have been done have been pending, as I mentioned earlier, the majority have been 4 stories and pretty much under 43 feet. This recommendation, based on the consultants, increases it by 15 feet. So my point is that projects have just penciled just fine. I really feel like we've been looking at development from the point of view of the developer, not a point of view of character. People want to live and work and play downtown because it's of its character and its small town feel. That doesn't mean large huge buildings. Building height can vary in size. We can still have interest. This is just maximum. It is not required that you have 4 stories. You can have less than 4 stories. And as we've also heard, more stories does not equal affordable housing, unfortunately. So I heard a lot when I was door knocking on the campaign trail and when I spoke to citizens, the need to downtown Littleton and the surrounding area having a lot of character and keeping it quaint. And I think this is an important way to do it.
Thank you. Council, any other discussion? We have Council Member Milliman and then Fay.
So I know nobody's surprised by this, but I don't support this amendment at all. I support the original phase 2 code updates from the consultants, from our staff, from HPP, and from Planning Commission. We can maintain the character. The character, I will go back to it again and again. For me personally, the character of our city is the people. It's the people that make up this city. We have the historic buildings. We will preserve those historic buildings. We can bring density into an urban downtown, which Littleton is. We've got the design guidelines. We have the design standards. So going forward, we will have an amazing, vibrant, successful, walkable, livable, lovable downtown Littleton. But I think if we put height restrictions, and 4 stories to 5 stories is not that big of a deal. Again, and we have the step backs, we have the setbacks. Again, we have the design guidelines. We're going to attract really good, cool developers with this code. And I'm afraid that if we limit the height, if we do it here, are we going to continue doing it around the rest of the city as well? I don't understand the fear with regards to height. But that's just me. And I really do hope that we pass the original code updates proposed by Kenda Keast. Thanks.
Council Member Fay. Uh-oh, is she frozen up there? Yeah, let's go ahead and we'll go to Mayor Pro Tem. We'll have to come back to Council Member Fay.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. A few thoughts. I really do want to applaud the staff and the consultant team for the work that they have put in to get us to this point. I think that they have worked so hard. I think they've worked thoughtfully, and I think that they've given us a good product to consider with our votes here tonight. I think that no public outreach process is perfect, but I think that Kathleen and her team have done a good job of getting public input in all the ways that she mentioned earlier, whether it's social media blasts or public comments emailed or joint meetings of the Planning Commission and the Council, the Historical Preservation Board, and on and on and on. I feel as a council member that I have received sufficient public input to be able to make a decision that our community can be better off because of. I think that trust is the wrong criterion. I know a lot of callers mentioned wanting council to trust the consultant team and trust the boards and commissions. Of course, I trust staff. Of course, I trust the Historical Preservation Board and Planning Commission and respect those groups very deeply and consult very closely with them often, right? But it's also true that I've been elected to apply my own experiences and my own thinking to the policy questions that come before council, and that's what I'm going to try to do with my vote tonight. So from the outset, right, the downtown code updates were meant to preserve and enhance community character. That's why we hired Kenda Keast, because they possess that specialization in character-based code for municipalities. And while I agree that there are any number of inputs into character, be it setbacks or materials or step backs or massing or what have you. Height is absolutely one, and it has drawn the attention of our community time and time and time again. Empirically speaking, the downtown character is 4 stories, and that's based on the height breakout that staff provided to us in a spreadsheet that said 4 stories. The only buildings that go above that, with the exception of the mill, are institutional buildings like ACC and the Arapahoe County offices. So to the extent that height affects character and height defines character in the downtown, we have 4 stories. And I really think that's the discussion. We're talking about character. Now, I really appreciate and admire the yearning for affordable housing, accessible housing, and an inclusive community that was expressed by many of the callers during public comment. I want those things too. I do not think emphatically that it is going to follow by adding a 5th story that we will achieve those or any other civic goals. We will not, by adding a 5th story and simply letting the market operate, get affordable housing. The reason that we have the really stark housing needs that the BBC consultants have identified for us, be it affordable housing or downsize housing for seniors or starter homes for young families or workforce housing, is because the Front Range housing market does not operate to achieve those things. And in fact, I think with regard to our downtown, because it's such a desirable place to live, we are far more likely to get high-end housing. And in fact, the recent development history in downtown bears that out. $750,000 townhomes not only does not achieve inclusiveness, not only does not achieve affordable housing, it exacerbates racial and economic disparities around housing in our community. And we risk creating a preserve of affluence like rich communities all throughout Colorado. And so let me be crystal clear on this point. I want affordable housing for our community. I want downsize housing for seniors. I want workforce housing. I want starter homes for young families. I don't believe that if my kids grow up in a community that's not diverse around economic status, around ethnicity and race and so on, that they will turn out to be fully fledged, well-rounded, large-hearted people. I am telling you truly that I want an inclusive and diverse community for Littleton, very much so. And I'm willing to work to achieve it. I simply think that we need to not make a dice roll, right, and hope that we get affordable housing. We need to be deliberate as a community in reaching our housing needs. And for me, when it comes to affordable housing, that means an ordinance mandating a certain percentage of affordable housing in new multifamily developments. I've already been talking about this, and I welcome any constituent who wants to work with me on this to work with me on it. But when it comes to this vote, I don't think it's between character and affordable housing. I think that's a false comparison. So I'm voting for 4 stories because I think that's in keeping with the downtown. And I will be very enthusiastically pursuing affordable housing as a mandate through an ordinance. And hopefully I can get 4 votes on the council for that. So
thank you. All right. Councilmember Fay is back with us. It's your turn, and then Driscoll.
At the beginning of this evening, 3 hours ago, we had a staff presentation that talked about the core of this effort being 2 things. One was a character-based approach, community character, and the other one was strong public process. And I would say that that this 5th story is an example of disregarding both of those things in a big way. The character-based approach, I believe, is based on take what we have already in value and do everything we can to preserve that. And what was done was somehow late in the process, after we already had struggled through the maps with community character and all of that, was that quite suddenly it seemed that we had a fifth story appear out of nowhere, justified by the height of three buildings that are not exemplary of community character. There are all three exceptions. One is the old mill. That's not typical community character. Arapahoe Community College, which is not typical downtown community character. Oops. And the Arapahoe County building, the cell towers on top of that. Not even the building is that tall. It's the cell towers that are that tall. And that's the third reason why we should have 5 stories. This makes no sense to me. And then when we go to the strong public process, I've said this again and again, we spent a long summer gathering public opinion, and never did 5 stories even come up as a possibility, let alone as a citizen desire. That seems to have appeared sometime after the first of the year, when we started talking about, does it pencil? Which is a term, I think what it means is, can developers make a lot of money on this, sell it fast, get out of town, and leave us with the remnants? I think that's what does it pencil means. I don't know for sure. But I do know that citizens in all of that envision work did not say they wanted 5 stories. They mostly said they wanted to stay with 3. I think we're violating our own intention by going ahead with 5 stories. That's all.
Great. Thank you very much. Councilmember Driscoll and Elrod.
Yes, again, I appreciate what Scott said about the work that Historical Board and the Planning Commission put into this and their thoughtfulness. We've heard from citizens tonight that do support a 5 story. So to say there's no support for this, clearly we didn't hear, except for maybe 2 people that did not support it. So there are lots in downtown Littleton, not on Main Street, not on Alamo, but there are lots off of maybe Church. Maybe there are lots out there that could support a 5-story building, and I would be okay with that.
Thank you, Councilmember Elrod.
We came into this ULUC process, and we started with needing to put in a moratorium downtown because there was development happening that was not in character with our downtown, or not what our community desired, or not in alignment with our comprehensive plan. And so when we look at what are those, what are those things that impact or have that resulting kind of feeling that this just doesn't fit, and for a council to take the position of a moratorium is a really, really difficult position, and it's something that we do as truly a last resort. And my concern with going to the 65 feet is that is a significant change that you only really recognize until you see it. So again, we're looking right now, when we look across our landscape of downtown, we're around that 40 feet mark, except for some of the exceptions that Scott pointed out. And so, when we realize the impact of 65 feet, it's already there. And I don't want to put ourselves again in a position of a moratorium of sorts, or expose our property owners to that. So I think going from the 40 feet that we're at now to 55 feet, that's 15 feet. That is a measured change, a measured growth, and to a certain degree, an opportunity for good development as well. So for that reason, I will be supporting this amendment. As far as, Pat mentioned, there could be some lots Absolutely. There probably could be some lots, but right now, the way this reads is, 5 stories, 65 feet anywhere, and the downtown mixed use. So it's not just addressing specific lots where the intended purpose of that lot may support it. So for that reason as well, I'm going to support the amendment tonight.
Great, thank you. And then before we vote, I'll just throw my 2 cents in. I'm going to support this amendment. I believe bigger is not necessarily better. It does not mean that just if it's bigger, we're going to have more affordable housing. That's a whole nother conversation. So I'm going to support this motion because as you come down Littleton Boulevard from the courthouse and to Main Street, it will be a noticeable difference. So with that, if there's no other conversation on this, City Clerk, if you could read back the motion, the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Grove moved and Councilmember Fay seconded to further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development under Table 10-4-18M, apartment building type standards, Table 10-4-18O, mixed-use building type standards, and Table 10-4-18Q, office institutional building type standards, to change the maximum height, number of stories and feet from 5 stories and 65 feet to 4 stories and 55 feet.
Great. Thank you, Council. That is the motion for the amendment. A thumbs up is in favor. A thumbs down is opposed. Ready? Vote.
The vote is 5 in favor with Council members Milliman and Driscoll voting no. The motion carries.
Thank you. All right, Council, is any other City Manager?
Mayor and Council, I think we, as staff, are ready to come back to the pitched roof percentage amendment that was being discussed earlier. And I think Kathleen Osher is ready to introduce that. If Council's ready.
Okay, well, we got to have a council member willing to support it to make that motion. Councilmember Grove, have you seen the motion yet? Have you heard it yet?
But I would like to hear what Kathleen has to say, if that's all right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think based on the discussion that we had and the amendment as it was drafted in your council packet, I think we're looking at something very, very similar and addressing the 25% and making that consistent with how the other tables would appear. So what we would suggest is just removing that last section of the amendment and no longer reference roof slope change, but it would be looking specifically at that percentage. I asked Mike to prepare that language. Mike, do you want to hop in here and just read that amendment so that Councilmember Grove?
Thanks, Kathleen.
Yeah.
We'd recommend the following language for the amendment or the following proposal. I further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development under Table 10-4-18 (M) apartment building type standards for minimum sloping roof form, hip or gable, as a percentage of building in plan view in the DTA column, change from NA to 25%.
Okay, so it would be the same thing, just minus that last 4 roof slope part. Councilmember Grove?
That's not it. In single family, detached, attached, multifamily, live work, mixed use, commercial, and official, you have a roof slope with no percentage above it.
Yeah. Would you like to go ahead and make a motion?
Okay. I further amend, I'm doing this on the fly.
It's okay.
I further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development under Table 10-4-18 for single-family detached, single-family attached, multifamily, live work, mixed use, commercial, and office have a percentage in the cell above where there's a description of roof slope. Or DTA, sorry, for DTA. There's just.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, we don't have a second. Oh, Councilmember Fay, are you seconding it?
Yes.
Councilmember Fay. Okay, that was a second. Okay, so we do have a motion and a second by Councilmember Fay. City Clerk, could you read back the motion, please?
I'd be happy to. And Councilmember Grove, I may have missed one of the building types, so please let me know if I did. Councilmember Grove moved and Councilmember Fay seconded to amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development and Table 10-4-18 for single-family detached, single-family attached, multifamily, mixed use, and office. Did I miss one, Pam?
Live work.
And thank you. Mixed use, live, work, and office have a percentage in the cell above where there's a description of roof slope in DTA.
And maybe this will help. I don't know if you have this there, but in the townhouse section on page 135, it was done correctly. You have a roof slope in DTA, and you have a percentage above it. But if you look at, for example, I'm grabbing this one in single family, on page 125 in DTA, you have a description of the roof slope, but no percentage. It was just left out.
Okay, so what your amendment is doing is that there will be percentage put in there.
That's all.
And it's sort of a simple amendment, actually.
Yeah, it's almost administrative.
Okay, so Councilmember Milliman, then Elrod.
Mark, I'm going to propose, do we have to vote on this amendment tonight, or can we take this particular amendment, this piece, to a study session? Because I am super confused, and I'm actually really concerned about this because I feel like that this could have a lot of unintended consequences. Is there any way that we can just take this one amendment, not vote on it tonight, and push it out to a study session? Allow us to think about it, to talk to staff, bring our questions to you. Can we do that?
Well, Councilmember,
we have a motion and a second on the table.
I understand that, but I'm just asking if we could please push this to a study session and not vote on it tonight. I really think this is a very, very important topic to discuss, and I feel like we don't have enough information. It was reworked tonight by staff. I think that we need a little bit more time on this specific topic. I really do.
Okay, Mark, I interrupted you. Did you want to continue?
Yeah, I think the short answer, of course, is that council could do that. But I think my suggestion is let's have Kathleen Osher and staff just react to that amendment and see if we have any obvious issues with that. If we don't, then I would recommend we just proceed with a vote.
Yes, thank you. Kathleen?
Yeah, so just to understand Councilmember Grove, then it would just be adding a percentage based on that definition, and you're comfortable with staff determining that percentage?
Yeah, and so is the second.
So, okay. And I think that that's something that, unless Mike, you have other ideas, I think that feels consistent with our offline conversation of just adding that consistency into those tables.
One second. I just said the second. That I was thinking I was the second, and I'm not. I think Councilmember Fay, weren't you the second? Yeah, and you don't have an issue with it?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you.
I would recommend that council specify that percentage as 25%.
Okay.
And that way it's clear.
Councilmember Grove, did you want to add that to your motion?
Yes, I think the way it would read would be at least 25%.
Yeah, I was going to say have a percentage of at least 25%.
Yes, that would be fine if you could put that in the appropriate place.
Hey, Councilmember Fay, you have an issue?
I don't have an issue with that at all. I see this as just cleanup and clarifying from the very beginning.
It's real. Okay, so we're going to go into more discussion. Councilmember Milliman, you still have your hand up, and then Elrod.
I'm still concerned that if you put, specifically with multifamily housing, you put a slope percentage on the top of that roof, that could potentially take away living space or an actual floor just to be able to accommodate that roof slope. And I just don't think that's appropriate for multifamily housing.
Thank you. Councilmember Elrod.
I don't think I cannot support this at this time, only because the obvious discussion that we've been having here. I understand the intent of trying to, I haven't gotten clarity. Is it an error? Is it administrative? Is it 25%? So why 25%? Why not 50%? In some cases, I think single family maybe had 50%. So I'm not getting clarity that this is truly administrative or an error in the document. And because of that, then we are proposing a change that does impact character that hasn't been vetted through the HPD, hasn't been vetted through planning. And quite honestly, we keep circling around this one right now. So I just I can't support it for that reason.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I agree with Karina. I just need some more runway. I appreciate what Pam's trying to do, and I think there is an issue here that needs to be fixed, and I think she's onto something in the way that she's trying to fix it, but I just need some time to consider. And so I at least for tonight, I'm going to say no. And when we revisit this, I think I will say yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Grove.
I just wanted to say I left out apartments. Those were the ones. It was fine in townhouses. It was done correctly. I would say this is just an error because you have a description and no percentage in a couple cases. In other cases you do. So.
Okay. Councilmember Fay.
I would like to toss out there, and Kathleen, I think either you or Michael is the person to answer. Would it be more palatable if instead of calling it an error, we call it simply an omission? A piece of information was omitted and we would like to add it. Is that the case?
Mike, I'll let Mike weigh in on that.
Yeah, I think we could call it an omission, and we could make the percentages consistent with the DNR character area, which would be at least 25%, but may go up with certain building types.
Okay, I'm up. I'm okay with this amendment because I believe as it was finalized that it would be at a minimum of 25%. Michael, was that correct? Is what? Okay, cool. So,
That's
and this
correct.
is really just the correction. It's not changing anything drastic. It's just for clarity right now. So I'm in favor of this amendment. Anyone else have any comments? Okay, City Clerk, Councilmember Millman.
I respectfully disagree, though, Mayor. I think that I don't feel like that this just is a little cleanup issue. I think that we could have some unintended consequences with making this change, and I need to fully understand it better, and I just don't. So I will ask again if we can table it, move it to a study session, talk about it later if that's possible.
Thank you. And I disagree. This is, we have a motion on the table in a second, and this is just, it's basically something that was left out that is just going to be put in. So I don't see it as that big of an issue. Everything we do has unintended consequences. There's no doubt about that. City Clerk, if you could go back and read the final amendment on this.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Grove moved and Councilmember Fay seconded to further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development and Table 10-4-18 for single-family detached, single-family attached, multifamily, mixed use, live, work, and office have a percentage of at least 25% in the cell above where there's a description of roof slope in DTA.
Thank you. Council, that is the motion for the amendment. So a thumbs up is approved, thumbs down is opposed. Ready? Vote.
The vote is 3 in favor with Council members Milliman, Elrod, Driscoll, and Mayor Pro Tem Malin voting no. The motion fails.
Okay, thank you. All right, Council. Councilmember Grove.
Another amendment.
Okay.
This wasn't in our packet.
All right.
We discussed this, and I'd like to, in the light of height and a little further analysis, I further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development under Figure 10-4-18B to make the maximum building heights the same for all types of buildings, and therefore change the maximum height for mixed-use building in DTA from 4 stories, 55 feet, to 3 stories, 45 feet.
We have a motion.
Councilmember Grove, can I have you repeat that, please?
I further amend the proposed amendment Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development under Figure 10-4-18B to make the maximum building height the same for all building types, and therefore change the maximum height for mixed-use buildings in DTA from 4 stories, 55 feet, to 3 stories, 45 feet.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. Councilmember Fay, are you seconding?
Yes, I second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. And I just want council to be aware that we have 5 amendments already, and that we're bordering on changing this quite a bit. So I just want to point that out.
And then, Mayor, if I could, we do still have another item on the agenda, and we are approaching 10 p.m.
Yes, we have 10 minutes before 10. And hopefully that item won't take long, but it may. Councilmember Grove?
The reason I'm proposing this amendment is because when we were in our study session, it was the first thing we addressed, and we had a lot of other discussion afterwards. And looking back in DTA, under single family detached, the maximum number of stories is 2 stories, 30 feet, single family attached, 2 stories, 30 feet, multiplex, 3 stories, 45 feet, townhouse, 3 stories, 45 feet, apartment, 3 stories, 45 feet, live work, 3 stories, 45 feet, commercial, stories, 45 feet. And this amendment makes mixed use in line with all the other commercial and multi-use buildings.
Okay. Councilmember Milliman.
Will respectfully not support this amendment. I feel like all of this work has been done by the consultants, and effectively accepting this amendment would throw all of that work out of the window. And quite frankly, I do not support this at all.
Councilmember Fay.
This whole effort we have been doing has been to unify and prescribe what the outside of a building is like, its mass, its height, and in order to preserve community character. And this, having mixed use, a different height, then is working on what the use of the building is rather than the outside structure of the building. And that's the reason it makes sense to me to have mixed use conform with the height of the other commercial-ish buildings.
Thank you. Any other comments? I see none. City Clerk, if you could read back the motion to amend.
First, can I confirm that Councilmember Fay was the second on that?
She was.
Thank you.
And this is number 9, is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor.
Thank you.
Councilmember Grove moved and Councilmember Fay seconded to further amend the proposed amended Title 10 of the Littleton Municipal Code relative to downtown development under Figure 10-4-18 to make the maximum building height the same for all building types and therefore make the maximum height of mixed-use buildings in DTA from 4 stories 55 feet to 3 stories 45 feet.
Good. Okay, Council, you have something to consider here. A thumbs up is in favor of that amendment. Thumbs down is opposed. Ready? Vote.
The vote, hold them up for a minute. I'm getting slow at counting. It's late. The vote is 3-4 with Council members Milliman, Elrod, and Driscoll, and Mayor Pro Tem Lynn voting no. The motion fails.
Okay. So Council, we have a main motion on the floor. If we have no more amendments, and I'm kind of hoping we don't, could you please read the main motion back, please, City Clerk?
Happy to. Councilmember Milliman moved and Councilmember Elrod seconded to approve the ordinance on second reading approving Phase 2 amendments to Title 10 of the City Code relative to downtown development with the 7 conditions recommended by Historical Preservation Board and Planning Commission, but this is now amended.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, Council, a thumbs up is approved, thumbs down is opposed. Ready? Vote.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion as amended carries unanimously.
Thank you. Cool. Let's get down to our last item. Let's see, we have, where are we? Sama, if you could remind our audience how they can participate.
Thank you. Citizens wishing to speak during the public hearing tonight who are not already in the queue should please call 669-900-6833. When prompted, enter the webinar ID 992-7782-7209. Please stay on the line and press *9 to raise your hand and be recognized for public comment.
Great, thank you very much. And I'm going to read the ordinance. It is one long sentence, I might add. It is ordinance number 39-2020, an emergency ordinance imposing a 90-day temporary moratorium on all new development within the downtown area as set forth in Figure 10-2-18 character area map in the Phase 2 amendments to Title 10 relative to downtown development and upon submission, acceptance, processing, or approval of any site development plan, demolition permit, application or plan approvals, or other types of approval by the City of Littleton related to such activities. That's clear as a bell, isn't it? All right, so that just to be clear, this is a new moratorium because the moratorium that we did back in February, I believe does expire at the end of October. We did extend it once, and I believe that's all we can extend it is one time. So that moratorium will expire, and this new moratorium would become effective if approved. With that, I will turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Actually, I do not have a presentation. I probably would refer this to our city attorney who wants to make a few comments about this.
A few? After after the phase 2 amendments, I think we're ready for a couple more hours of comments.
Hey, just get to it, will you?
Got it. So as you mentioned, Mayor, City Council adopted a moratorium in February or earlier this year. And one of those moratoriums, the one that's currently in effect, was for residential developments in which there's going to be more than one unit. So City Council continued that for 150 days this past May, and it actually expires at the end of this week. One of the things that Council is obviously more than aware of with these phase 2 amendments is they've done a little bit more than simply reclassifying. And I think maybe that was what we had envisioned at the beginning of this process with these phase 1 and phase 2 fixes was, kind of just changing the term from this to this. And what Council is doing with the adoption of these phase 2 amendments is a DT zoning. And in conjunction with that, Council is also establishing these 4 character zones or 4 character areas. So as it relates to that, some of this actually does constitute a rezoning and not simply just a reclassification. Some uses are obviously not going to be allowed once the map amendments get approved. So that's what the purpose of this moratorium is. And it's not just on residential units with more than one development. It also puts a moratorium on commercial uses, commercial developments as well, while the map amendments, i.e. those character zones, are refined and solidified. And so in order to do that, what we need to do is have a public process. Those property owners who are affected by the proposed zoning or rezoning or character area changes have an opportunity to be notified as to what's going on. And tonight, Council, officially made it aware, what's going on downtown in terms of the amendments that have been made and the adopted changes. So as part of the process, we will send notice out to all affected property owners, as well as those property owners that are adjacent to them. I believe it's within 500 feet of any affected property owner. Those residents are going to get a notification too, and they'll have an opportunity to go in front of Planning Commission. And the whole purpose of this isn't going to be to talk about, well, what should be in the DNR, what should be in, this type of specific zoning district. It's, should my property be in that zoning district or not, in that character area or not? We're not going to talk about what constitutes the DNR zone anymore. That's what we did tonight. That's what we can revisit through the course of the ULUC process. But they have an opportunity to be heard. They have a due process right. They have a property right. And so they'll appear before a Planning Commission, those people interested in talking about their property and whether it should be in this zone or whether it should be in that zone. And then after that, Planning Commission will make their recommendations to refining whatever boundaries they want. And then we'll go to City Council. And so we'll have a public hearing on that. And those affected property owners will have their say and an opportunity to petition you, City Council, to, exclude them or include them. And so that's what the purpose of this moratorium is. So what we did tonight, while we adopted all the text amendments that we're going to make to the phase 2 changes, we have not technically adopted that map. So that 10-2-18 character area map, that's not officially adopted yet. That's the next process. That's called the rezoning process. And that's when we'll have an opportunity to do that. So the purpose of this keeps everything in place, keeps everything from changing while we solidify what that map is. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. And Council, it is 10 o'clock, and according to our rules, we have to agree that we'll continue on. Is anyone opposed to continuing? I don't see anybody else, so we're going to continue on. So with that, Sama, could you go ahead and remind our audience one more time how they can participate?
Yes, so if you'd like to participate, you can call 669-900-6833 and use the webinar ID 992-7782-7209. Please go ahead and press *9 now or as soon as you join to get in our queue for public comment.
Good, thank you very much. Council, did you have any questions for staff before we go into the public hearing?
I had one quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
Jennifer, have we had any pushback on the first moratorium? Are there people out there pending, developers out there pending, waiting for decisions by city council and staff?
What we have heard from developers is they're just thrilled that we are actually putting together regulations that they can follow. So they are patient with us as we go through this. So we have done some pre-planning applications, but we have not accepted per the moratoriums any of that, and we have not really gotten pushback from developers on that. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Hey, Jen, no, I think that's a good summary. I think we have anxious developers out there who are waiting for the moratoriums to end so they can proceed with some building plans. That's all I'll add.
Great, thank you very much. All right, well, with that, I'm sorry?
If I could, there is an opportunity to potentially end the moratorium sooner. It's just with needing to provide notification to all the affected property owners and their adjacent neighbors with the public hearing process in front of both Planning Commission and City Council. We just kind of needed that 90 days in case there needed to be an extra date involved. So happy to end it sooner if we can get through the public hearing process, but that's what we've got for now.
Great. Councilmember Elrod?
When's the public hearing? When are you thinking the public hearing will be? What's the date?
One more time.
What is the date of the public hearing that you're thinking?
Right. So right now we are preparing notification and planning for a Planning Commission public hearing on the 9th of November. And then it would go to council, I believe it is on the 15th of December.
Yeah, it would be the first reading would be the first and then the 15th.
Public hearing.
Good. All right. Thank you. All right. And with that, I'd like to open the public hearing for this item. It is 10:03. And again, due to possible numerous calls from the citizens wishing to speak tonight, if any of the citizens have already have had their point made by another caller, if you would, please, to help us save some time here, it simply give us your name, your address or district, your stance on this particular item, and acknowledge if you agree with a statement that has already been made. And with that, Sema, who's our first caller?
Thank you, Mayor. We do have callers in the queue. I'd like to make one last reminder. If you would like to speak on this public hearing, please press *9 to be recognized. Again, if you're listening in our queue, go ahead and press *9 if you'd like to be recognized to speak. I'd like to give them just a second, Mayor, to catch up if there's anyone in our queue trying to do that.
You bet, you bet.
All right, I'm still not seeing any hands. Oh, there we go. We've got one hand.
Okay,
Caller
let's have it.
9, you have been unmuted. Caller 819, please begin speaking.
Hi, Sema. Did you say me?
Yes.
Yes.
This is Pam Chapler, and I live downtown. And I'm pretty much the only one in the Historic Preservation Board or Planning Commission or City Council who does. I'm really appalled by the actions tonight, and to make this kind of, I think, cursory process for our comments on the map reflects the attitude of the folks who have power in the city over us. And again, I'm appalled, and that's all I'll say.
Okay, thank you. Sema, do we have another caller?
Mayor, we have no other hands raised in the queue.
Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing at 10:06. All right, council. Do we have any more discussion, or would you like to go right into a motion? I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Yes, I move to approve ordinance 39-2020.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Councilmember Fay raised her hand. So we have Councilmember Driscoll made the motion. Councilmember Fay second. Council, any discussion? Seeing none, if we go ahead, a vote to approve is a thumbs up, and a vote to deny is a thumbs down. That's for to approve a moratorium. It would be a thumbs up. To deny is a thumbs down. Council, ready? Vote.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Great. Council, we have no other business. And with that, it is 10:07 and we are adjourned. Thank you.